the same time, or yeah, we're live.
Senator Anderson.
Here.
Senator Hutchings.
Here.
Senator Pappas. Senator Pappas. I see you, Senator Pappas, so I'll mark you as here. Senator Steinmetz.
Here.
Representative Brown.
Here.
Representative Crank.
Here.
Representative McGuire. Representative McGuire.
Present.
Representative Newsom.
Here.
Representative Obermueller.
Here.
Representative O'Hearn.
Here.
Representative Western.
Here.
Co-Chairman Eklund.
Here.
Co-Chairman Von Flavin.
Here. All right, all the same rules apply. You probably know where the bathroom is in your own house, we hope. Other than that, we're called to order and announcements. Anybody have anything for the good of the order? If not, we'll work right into Mary Beth. Do you have some people in the military department that are ready to come in?
Mr. Chairman, they are on board and in the meeting.
All right. General, would you like to take over?
Hey, sir. Good morning to the committee. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I'm going to drive here and see if I can overcome this technology. Let me try sharing my screen. How does that look to everybody? Okay.
It looks good.
All right. Hey, good morning again. I hope everybody just finds you safe, and appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you here this morning. Got some different folks than we've normally had in the past on board here with us today. In the room with me is Brigadier General Alkire, who you know, our State Command Chief, Josh Moore, and also our Army lawyer, Major Jeremy Anderson. We also have Major Karen Hinkle, who is our Air JAG, and Jackie Stoneham on the Zoom call as well. Sir, if it's good with you, Mr. Chairman, I'll just go ahead and dry it on if that meets your intent. All right, sir, this is what I'm tracking. I'd like to do a quick, if you'd indulge us, a quick special presentation. Then I'll give a quick update on what's going on in the Wyoming Military Department, COVID-19 responses and military budget. Then we'll go into the legislation that's on the agenda. We'll start with the military code revisions. We'll move to the TBI resolution, and then we'll get an update from Mr. Shepard on the veterans facilities and their reports. And then I believe Representative Eklund, Chairman Eklund, has some discussion on siting wind and solar facilities and their military facilities as we go forward.
That sounds perfect.
Sounds good, sir. Sir, wanted to, if you could take a moment to recognize some very special individuals to the military department that have sat on this committee with the award of the Honorary Cowboy Colonel. This is given by the Wyoming Military Department to individuals who have been particularly, who have worked particularly hard for our state, our nation, and our Wyoming National Guard. And there are three individuals we'd like to recognize today who we'd like to bestow the rank of Honorary Cowboy Colonel to. Hey, sir, first off, to you, sir, as our chairman. Just can't tell you how much we appreciate your leadership, your mentorship, your advice, your great common sense, and your support to the Wyoming Military Department. As you can see on this slide, and obviously you know well, sir, you've been a committee member for quite some time, a chairman twice of this committee since at least personally I've been aware of, and your support of the military department has been exceptional, sir. So from all of the folks, Wyoming National Guard and the Wyoming Military Department, we'd like to award you the status of Honorary Cowboy Colonel. And at some point in time, I'd like to come up and give this to you personally and make that presentation to you, sir.
Well, thank you, General. I appreciate that. And hopefully this virus gets over within the next few months. So
yes, sir.
We'll see you
yes,
then.
Sir. Yep. thank you very much, sir, for your service. So, yep. Sir, we'd also like to recognize Representative Stan Blake, who's been a committee member since 2007. And Representative Blake, again, your service, your friendship, your willingness to work through the very tough issues with the military department has been exceptional. And you've been on this committee since even before I knew it was a committee. And I just appreciate, and all of us appreciate, the outstanding work that you've done. And sir, we too would like to bestow on you the rank of Honorary Cowboy Colonel, sir.
We'll we'll say your words to Representative Blake when he shows up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. And then last one, sir, Representative Laux. I know that Representative Laux wasn't able to be here today, but again, he's a longstanding member of the committee, worked through some very difficult issues with us, and just did a great job of serving his state and nation. And we wanted to tell him thank you as well.
All right. Thank you.
All right. All right, sir. I thought we'd start real quickly with just some military updates. I highlighted and read some of the things that may be different from your slides that are more recent or updated information. Let me start with Air Guard deployments. We've got about 67 airmen that are expected to come back from now through the end of January. And we currently have about 122 support personnel deployed all across the AOR. They're located in Niger, they're located in Djibouti, Jordan, Kuwait, Iraq, Qatar, all across the Central Command area of responsibility. And we'll be getting them back over the course of the next few months and into the spring. Senator Barrasso actually was able to visit about 13 of our airmen in Qatar on Thanksgiving, and got a chance to talk to them and spend some time with them. Sir, you may have heard about the C-130J basing decision. C-130J is the next follow-on modernized aircraft after our current C-130H3 models. We thought that, I personally think it's a necessity for Wyoming to receive that aircraft in the future. We were not selected in this round of C-130J basing. Representative Cheney's folks called me on Tuesday of last week and informed me, and then the Chief National Guard Bureau called me a couple hours later and said that West Virginia, Texas, Kentucky were the winners this round, and potentially Georgia, depending on how the appropriations bill falls out here coming up. So we were one of 8 that competed, and we were not in the top 4 on this particular one. Don't have all the details yet as we going forward, but that person is that was not good for us, and we'll continue to continue that fight of trying to ensure that Wyoming receives the most modern aircraft in our Air National Guard. Sir, Army Guard deployments, really nothing new. We deployed just a little under 1/3 of our entire Army force structure this last year. Everybody's home though, and they've gone through their yellow ribbon or reintegration activities. And even though we had through COVID is, put a significant impact on that, we did get everybody back and integrated, and folks are looking good. I'm not anticipating any more Army Guard deployments until probably 2022, unless something changes in the world. But that's what we know right now. I did want to bring you up on some other legislation. LSO 0135, the Universal Occupational Licensure. It's actually in Joint Corporations Committee, and that does some benefits for military spouses. Representative Brown is very familiar with it, but I did want the committee to just have some visibility that there is another committee has some military issues in front of it in the form of 0135, and just for your awareness as we go forward.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question for General Porter. The personnel that were deployed, is that a hotbed of COVID, or is it pretty much under control over there because of the temperatures? And do they have to quarantine when they come back to the United States? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative or Senator Anderson, excuse me. To the first one, COVID's been pretty well controlled in the AOR within the military side of the house. And we do have to quarantine, both going and coming. There is quarantine. Each service does it a little bit different, but everybody gets quarantined as they come back.
Does that answer your question, Senator Anderson? Okay, thank you.
All right, so just to continue down to some just military department news. If you see that photo there on the right, myself and the mayor of Guernsey, Mayor Nick Postian, we just cut the ribbon on a new connector from the base camp there at Camp Guernsey into the town. It's concrete walkway that'll be safer for soldiers and airmen as they travel into the town of Guernsey. That got finished up, and that took a lot of hard work on the part of Camp Guernsey and the town of Guernsey to get that done. And they did a great job of getting that squared away. Wyoming Cowboy Challenge Academy, Class 42 was interrupted last spring with COVID. They had to, 41 and 42 actually, was interrupted. We brought 41 back about July timeframe. They graduated their pieces, and we continued on with about 50 or change cadets in Class 42. We just, because of COVID, they started testing positive. We just released those folks the week before Thanksgiving. They all, however, will graduate. They spent enough time in the residential portion that we were able to obtain a waiver from Department of Defense and National Guard Bureau to allow them to graduate. So all of Class 42, even though it's disrupted, they will graduate from the Cowboy Challenge Academy. We are looking to start our next class. Due to COVID, though, we're thinking we're gonna have to push that to the right to at least the 1st of March, and we'll see how that goes, and we can talk to that more a little bit later. We did have one soldier.
Mr. Chairman. I don't know.
Chairman Eklund.
So a question I've got, they'll graduate from the academy. How does this absence or disruption affect their GED?
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Eklund, we'll continue to give them the GED or the high set. For Class 42, we may have to wind up going to their town to allow them to get it, but they'll receive their high set, assuming that, as long as they meet the criteria for it. They take the test and they receive the credit for it. All right, sir. We did have one soldier on state active duty on election day at the state response coordination cell, just to be there if there was anything going on cyber-wise, and there was no issues there. We are considering, we currently have a state partnership with the country of Tunisia. That's been very well. That's gone well, but they continue. Countries still continue to ask for partnerships out there, and we've been pretty reluctant to do that because of our force structure and the size of our state. But there is a country, Cabo Verde, which is on the west coast of Africa over there. You can see it in the small inset. They're about 9 islands. If you put all their landmass together, it's probably smaller than Laramie County by just a little bit. So we're considering partnering with Cabo Verde as well going forward, because I think we can be of benefit to them, and it shouldn't strain the resources that we have within the state to support them. So that's not our decision to make. That's Department of Defense decision, but I think we're going to apply, and we'll see how that goes. But wanted you to know. Over. Sir?
Yes, General, are you going to keep up with Tunisia?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, yes, sir. That's correct. Tunisia really is our primary partner, and also tremendously important to United States security cooperation. So they'll maintain our focus, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brown, do I hear your voice out there?
You do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, just a quick question for you here. Jumping back up to the third bullet point here, the C-130J. if we are not selected here as a basing opportunity, just thinking a ways down the road here, if we are not selected for that, how long does our current mission last for our current airlift wing? If we're not selected for a J, is this something that we need to be, not necessarily scared of or anything like that, but be prepared for in case the J is not selected for Cheyenne?
Chairman Von Flannery, Representative Brown. I think I'll explain it like this. I think it's something that we have to be cognizant of. Due to some forethought of leaders previous to myself and those currently serving, Wyoming has been very forward thinking in the modernization of the H-3 aircraft that we have right now. When I say modernization, that's changing blades, that's changing engines. You've heard us talk about the Rolls-Royce engines and AMP-2. We are the leader in the National Guard in terms of modernizing the current platform. So that's 8-bladed props, new engines, all that good stuff. So there's not enough money probably to pure fleet the 18 wings of C-130Js that are currently in the Guard. So they're going to modernize the other ones. So we have a step up in that endeavor. We've kind of been sort of straddling the fence in modernization of the aircraft and also trying to get a new aircraft. So I would say that we're in pretty good shape in terms of modernization. We lead the nation in getting our C-130s converted to the new modernization piece. But we think our future right now is in J's. So we'll continue to push that hard. I think our next personal argument that we'll make is we need them for the mass mission. That extra power that the J provides is critical. You actually get about the same amount of power with the new modernization once we get fully modernized H-3s. But those airframes, those old H-3 airframes are 1992, and they're going to continue to get older. The J's are obviously coming out in 2021, 22, 23. They're just new aircraft. Did that help you, Representative? Is that too much?
All right.
All right. Okay. Just wanted to talk about continuing resolution. Coming up on the 11th of December, the current continuing resolution for federal funding will expire. Haven't had too much information yet on whether we think a government shutdown will occur or not, or if they'll pass another CR as we go forward. But I'll tell you that we're only about 2 weeks away from that. So we're starting to do planning on how that affects the Wyoming Military Department. In the past, we've been allowed to keep essential personnel on, and we're going through that process as we go forward. Even if a government shutdown occurs, we'll have the ability to have folks here to be able to respond in some situations as that gets forward. I think my next slide talks more about COVID, but is there any questions I can answer on this one before we move on?
Questions from the committee? Seeing none. General, continue.
All right, sir. Just thought I'd give you a quick thumbnail on what's going on in COVID response. Our 84th Civil Support Team, our full-time 21-positioned chemical biological response team, they've been involved with COVID testing almost from the beginning. Approximately 8 months worth of personnel and equipment support. They've been we've had 2 people at the state lab assisting with COVID testing. General Alkire and the team have been part of the COVID-19 Interagency Working Group, otherwise known as the SIG. Really, their big contribution was the Wyoming COVID response strategy that they helped draft in support of the Secretary of State. We have also had liaison with the State Response Coordination Cell. We've had that since the beginning, just to make sure that we're synced up tight with WOES and where the governor's going. I think all of you are tracking a little bit the Wyoming National Guard support. This new state active duty mission that I haven't read just really emerged in the last 2 weeks. The Cheyenne Medical Regional Hospital asked for some folks to help support their staff. Their staff was starting to get a little run down and a little fatigued. And so we sent 10 airmen over there to do some support with them. They're not doing any medical activity per se. They're doing a lot of cleaning, patient moving, administration, that sort of things. Right now, that's a 30-day mission, but it could continue to drive on after that as we go forward. We're doing the same thing in Campbell County. That mission just came up last week. We got the soldiers together on last Friday, and they'll start working today and tomorrow up in Campbell County. Same thing, not doing any medical work, but all doing administration, cleaning, that sort of thing, trying to help the hospitals out. As I talked with some of you about, we did have about 20 soldiers and airmen on for about 30 days to do some COVID mapping to assist the Department of Health with making phone calls to notify folks of quarantine orders and that sort of thing. That ended for us on the 4th of November, and our folks are all back from that. They did do quite a bit of work though. They did have almost 3,600 total contacts, 2,111 positive cases. So it was a good mission for them. You can see down there that's one of our captains doing the calls there for the Department of Health. We have one aeromedical NCO deployed over to Travis Air Force Base. They're actually supporting Indo-PACOM or India Pacific Command with patient tracking and moving around out there. And they've been doing that good 8 months now as that goes forward. CARES Act funding, most of that funding on the Army and the air side, you can see there, that's really been used for PPE, sneeze guards, really securing facilities and trying to make them more COVID proof as we go forward. It's more facility types of things, and personal protective equipment is where our CARES Act funding has primarily gone. Just to let you know that COVID certainly has affected the Wyoming Military Department. I had tested positive for COVID back in October. Over it now, it was a pretty small symptoms for me, but we do have quite a bit. We have 161 positive cases in total in the military department. There's 32 of them are active, 129 have recovered, no hospitalizations and no deaths, obviously. It is affecting the way we train in our readiness. We're going to do what we call a virtual drill in December, which means, except for some folks that have to get some physicals in order to be ready to deploy, we'll primarily be doing it over computer and conference call as we do training for that. So that'll be December. If we have to keep doing something along those lines, it will affect readiness going forward. We just can't not be able to train, not get on the equipment, not practice our techniques and procedures as we go forward. So we continually to work through that as COVID continues to evolve. We continue to evolve with it. All right. Is there any questions on this one before I go to my last slide, which just is a really quick summation of state budget impacts to the military department?
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, continue.
All right. Hey, just very quickly, just wanted to go through the state budget impacts for Wyoming. As I think you're aware of the governor's methodology in the step 1, 2, and 3 cuts. I'll start with just sort of the big overarching ones that hit us. First responder retirement funds right now, it looks like if things go as the governor projects, we'll defund that. And what that is, the legislature set up several years ago when first responders deploy, they continue to have to pay into their retirement accounts while they're gone. And so this fund was established to do that for them as they deployed. We traditionally only had about 6 or 7 folks in that account, but that won't be a benefit that will happen in the future for them going forward. Civil Air Patrol, really, if I summed it up, Civil Air Patrol has been funded primarily out of the federal government. If you recall, probably a little over a decade ago, we lost a Civil Air Patrol aircraft during a search and rescue mission. As we looked at what caused that, we determined that it was really not enough training time, seat time for pilots. So the legislature, once again, provided some state money to allow more training time for pilots, plus maintenance of aircraft and hangaring of aircraft, which normally the feds don't cover. But the state did that to the tune of about $170,000 a biennium. We're gonna get out of that business. The Civil Air Patrol still be able to perform its missions, just without perhaps some of the enhancements that the state has had for it in the past. The Veterans Museum up in Casper, we're going to turn that really to a warm status. We'll be able to keep artifacts up there, but won't really be able to have visitors. And we're going to lose the 2 positions in this biennium. One of them's already moved on. Katie's already moved on. She had an opportunity to do some more school, postgraduate work, and our current director is sticking with us till we get through this. But the Veterans Museum will, for all intents and purposes, be closed to the public. Armories, armory maintenance, that's really the biggest thing for us, about 235,000 to cut in armory maintenance, which really means we're gonna have to start deferring quite a bit of maintenance going forward. That puts us below what I have told you in the past has been our bottom line for maintaining our readiness centers. We're gonna close the Level Armory. I will tell you that that's somewhat related to budget cuts, but it's more related to force structure and the force structure we're going to receive there. So we will be closing the Level facility down here in a couple of years as well. This year for the Armory and the field maintenance facility in about 2 years. Positions, we really lost, I suppose you'd say 4 positions. In addition, 6 positions total, the 2 at the museum. Plus, we eliminated 2 general funded positions. They were vacant at the time, but we elected not to rehire them, and we eliminated those. And then there were 2 additional positions at Camp Guernsey that we converted to federal reimbursed positions. So a total of 6 positions out of the military department on the full-time side going forward. National Guard retirees, we're going to eliminate that support to that program. That's particularly important for us because it can often be as long as 20 years from the time an individual retires at the age of 40 before they're able to draw benefits at the age of 60. And so that takes a lot of communication in that 20 years between us and the individual that retires. Certainly benefits change, heck, the organization change, how you access your retirement benefits, all that change. And we're going to be challenged to make sure that we continue to reach out and support the retirees. The Barrel Team stipend will go away. That's, if you recall, that's a stipend that we give to the veteran service organizations that perform the services for our veterans. That lets them, clean their uniforms, update their uniforms, weapons, that sort of thing. The stipend will be defunded. And then probably the one that's the most impactful to the military department is Wyoming Cowboy Challenge Academy. Right now, the governor has put that in the budget to cease funding at the end of July. I believe he did that on purpose to allow some discussion to go on between now and July with you, the Joint Appropriations Committee, and the leadership of the legislature to allow that discussion to happen. But as it stands right now, Wyoming Cowboy Challenge will close its doors on the 1st of July if nothing changes. Mr. Chairman, I believe that's all I have in terms of updates and that sort of thing. I certainly stand ready for questions before we go into the legislation. No.
Seeing none, General.
Oops. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hutchings, go for it.
Thank you, sir. This is for General Porter. Thank you for that wonderful update. A couple questions. The Quebec Visual Center outside of Cheyenne, I don't know what the status is on that. And the Cowboy Youth Challenge program, was that a state initiated program or a federal program?
Chairman Bonflater and Senator Hutchins. Let me add the first. I don't know about the Quebec one. That was part of, I believe, the Air Force Base turning that over to state museums, I think, but I don't know that for sure. And it's not part of the Wyoming Military Department, and I don't have good visibility on it, ma'am. So I couldn't tell you on that one. The Cowboy Challenge program is a partnership between the federal government, the National Guard Bureau, really specifically Department of Defense, the National Guard Bureau, and the state. There's about, 39 programs out there, or 39 states out there that have programs. And they're funded in a cooperation between the state generally funds in the neighborhood of 25%, and the feds fund in the neighborhood of 75% of that program. So that the state has buy-in for the program going forward. So it's definitely a cooperation between the two entities. Did that answer your question, Senator?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And so on the budget, we do have some public comment. Mary Beth, would you let somebody in?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. Goebbels is already in the meeting.
Okay, Mr. Goebbels, would you like to speak?
Yes, sir. What questions do you have?
No, we were wondering if you had any public comment.
Yes, I was slated for a little later in the day, sir. I would like to stick to protocol. Would you like to answer? Would you like me to present at this time or later?
No, that'd be fine if you want to present later.
Okay.
We'll let General Porter go on through his draft legislation.
Please.
All right, sir. Let me get us to the next. So this is, I believe, is what we're discussing today, military code revisions, which Major Karen Hinkle will take us through. We'll follow that up with the joint resolution that I believe Senator Steinmetz presented to us and now has been drafted. Major Anderson will walk us through that, and then we'll go through the just an update on veterans and end up with Representative Eklund and the discussion of 0249. Major Hinkle, I think I'll turn it over to you if we could, please.
Right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Major Karen Hinkle. I'm the staff judge advocate out at the 153rd Airlift Wing, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about the working draft bill, which is 21 LSO 0015. As you'll recall, this was discussed at the previous session in October or September, but it was without the benefit of the actual draft provisions. So I'll note it is a 20-page draft, but as you'll see, the vast majority of the changes that are in there, most of those are stylistic corrections based on the existing statute. And so the intent was really to simplify existing legislation and address some major errors that have been causing issues for the Wyoming Military Department in addressing disciplinary issues. With that, Mr. Chairman, would you like me to go through the bill page by page, or would you like to take it up as a whole at this point?
We can discuss the military code revisions as you have on the slide, and then we can take it up as a bill. Either Ms. Jarvis will just detail that or you will.
Excellent, sir. And so just on the slide, just to highlight, it's correcting errors that are in some of the phrasing and names of specific positions, and identifies processes that the previous statute didn't contemplate. And then it also expands rulemaking authority only to the extent that it clarifies really who is going to promulgate the rules, although the prior statute did already anticipate rulemaking actions. I don't really have any further comments on the slide that's in front of you. And if it's all right, Mr. Chairman, unless there are questions at this point, we can go through the bill.
Ms. Jarvis, do you have any other comments for this other than we'll go through the bill at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I do not have any comments, and I'm happy to take you through the bill. It's your pleasure whether you would like.
Ms. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Hinkle or
Hutchins,
myself.
you have a question?
Sorry, Heather, to interrupt. Yes, Mr. Chairman. As I noticed on the last two lines of page number 1, it mentions creating new subsections and creating new subsections again. Can you go over what new things are we creating amongst the kind of changes that we were supposed to be making? Can someone go over that at some time?
So Ms. Jarvis, would you like to go over this, or would you like to go over the bill, or Karen Hinkle? Is it Major Hinkle
Major Hinkle, sir.
or Major Hinkle would like to go over this?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to walk through the bill
Okay,
and to
please.
point out what was the new subsection
All right.
or new subsections when they exist. Okay, so this bill draft, beginning on page 1. Let's see, I think what we could possibly do is not share the screen anymore for a bit. If General Porter might not share his screen. That way you can see people raising their hands easier, Mr. Chairman.
I will try not to
With
share
that.
the screen. You can figure it out.
All right.
Okay, so beginning on page 1, this is the bill draft, as you recall, is amending and updated the state military code, which involved repealing some provisions and then other amendments and things. So in section 1, as Representative Hutchins pointed out, this tells what is being done to each of the sections, because the committee's directive earlier this year was to, rather than creating something new out of whole cloth, it was to go into what exists and make amendments as adjust things as accordingly. So beginning on going to page 2 and starting with 19-12-101, in the existing code, just to orient folks, the military code is 19-12-101 through 110. And so that's where all of these changes take place. So here in 19-12-101, the changes that, as per the proposal at the previous meeting, are to make the bills is actually on page 3 reflect what the practice is and be like other agencies where it goes through the rules are promulgated through the director. Now, the process of the Administrative Procedure Act is that rules also then go through the governor, but just this was to update it according to how the different agencies are. That's in subsection A. Subsection B is what this updates the reference to the federal code. So for example, it is saying that to the extent that the provisions are not inconsistent with what you'll see here in this bill, the punitive articles, so that's focusing on the punishment, the criminal articles of the Uniform Code of Military Justice that are in effect at the time of the offense, and that's the federal Uniform Code of Military Justice, are adopted by the state of Wyoming, and they apply to any member when in, and this terminology, my understanding was to properly catch the way that someone who's in the military is referred to. And so when they're in a duty status, so it's not called necessarily active duty for the different types of positions as far as with the guard and things like that. So it's just when in a duty status, including a status under Title 32 United States Code, and that's a federal code definition of a duty status title. Now the subsection C, here's one of those new that is added, that is inserted. Proceedings under this article shall follow procedures for state criminal courts. So that refers to the existing criminal court, Wyoming criminal court rules and procedures, except as modified by this article or in rules promulgated by under this article. So it does say that they will be using Wyoming code then. And what that
Mr. Steinmetz has a question for you.
Oh, sorry, I was looking down, I didn't see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we went so fast, I need to take you back to section A. And I, just for my edification, being fairly new on this committee still, in section A, we're changing it from the governor upon advice of the adjutant general shall promulgate and publish rules. And I know you addressed that to be like any other agency. My question is the military department like any other agency? Because he is the commander-in-chief of the National Guard, as I understand it. So could you just help me out with that for my knowledge as to how that all works and if this is still an appropriate change? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Heather?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Steinmetz, this refers only to the promulgation of rules. And so rules do go through and can be denied or approved by the governor. The promulgation begins with the head of an agency. And my understanding also from Colonel Smith at the previous meeting is that this is this, in addition to being the way that rules are promulgated under the Administrative Procedure Act, excuse me, is that this also reflects the how they have been promulgating these. And I just wanted to put a caveat there that please, Major Hinkle, if I misspeak, jump in, because I'm not trying to advocate for or against. I'm trying to reflect what my understanding of the testimony was and is, as far as the need for this change. Is that
Major Hinkle, do you have any questions or comments?
No, Mr. Chairman and Senator Steinmetz, Ms. Jarvis's explanation is correct. Really, the intent is just to make this more of a rulemaking process similar to all of the other agencies. While the military department is a little bit different in the sense that we do have a formal discipline process because it is a military unit. It's really just designed to address the rules and the procedures that those disciplinary processes will be handled. And then the governor, as you'll see in the remainder part of the statute, still has some very specific roles and functions in addition to the general approval of the rule process.
Senator Steinmetz, did that answer your question? All right, thank you. Onward, Heather.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, so at the bottom of page 3 was that inserted subsection C. And by inserting that subsection C, then you'll see that at the top of page 4, the previous subsection C is then renumbered as D, subsection D. And this just simply, the main changes in here in this subsection are throughout, so that I won't necessarily be a broken record. Court martial or courts martial is corrected to be either singular or plural, depending on the correct grammatical thing in the sentence. so that I won't necessarily point out, so I can focus on the more substantive changes. And the rest of this subsection is that it refers correctly to the punitive articles of the Uniform Code of Military Justice instead of the previous outdated, I believe, reference to the Appendix 12 of the United States Manual for Courts Martial. So that's what is changed in that subsection. And then subsection E is just a renumbering from D to E, since we slipped the C in there. Then here is another new subsection, subsection F. And this just specifies how the Military Defense Council, it specifies that they shall be appointed for any accused pursuant to promulgated rules, and that the qualifications required of counsel shall include admission to practice law in Wyoming or holding a current position as military judge advocate. And one thing I wanted to point out here or throughout, there's not necessarily a best or worst time to point it out, but we've had several discussions, Major Hinkle and I had several discussions and some research as far as the nature of military courts being of an executive nature. And so because executive committees, agencies, things can promulgate their own rules, when it says that when these are articles, military articles are promulgating their rules and deciding things, that's from an executive nature. So it's not an boy, words escaped me this morning, but it's not an unauthorized delegation of power from the legislative branch over to the executive. It is an executive function because that's what military courts are. And I can go into that in more detail if the committee wishes, as far as some of the cases and bills or cases and information that Major Hinkle and I discussed. But I just mentioned it here because here's one of those where they will appoint, the defense counsel. Here's another new section, subsection G, and that's at the top of page 5. Sentencing in any court-martial shall for any case under this article be by the presiding judge or summary court officer. And as to where that comes from, I believe that sentencing is addressed later in the in these articles or in these sections, and so it needed to be moved up here right up front so that it addressed across the whole board here to this section 101. Moving to section 102, there are some definitions in this section, and subsection A was just adding some quotation marks. Subsection B, it simply is striking the language about any marshal of the courts who are appointed pursuant to the provisions of this code, because that is addressed earlier as far as to whom it is applying for that section, because subsection B is that when the subsection B is relating to apprehending persons and being able to, when they can be apprehended, to have these articles or these sections apply to them. Subsection 103, which is just the title at the bottom of page 5, and then moving over to page 6 in subsection A, was just the court martial. And in fact, if you look at all of page 6, that was just getting things so they were correct grammatically. And then, but what is added is in subsection B, paragraph 2, at the bottom of page 6, it's specifying that a general officer of the Wyoming National Guard, a general officer of the Wyoming National Guard may convene a courts-martial is one of the, so that's one of the persons who can convene a court-martial. So in its entirety, the people who can convene a courts-martial are the adjutant general, that was paragraph 1, and or a general officer of the Wyoming National Guard in the same military branch as the accused. Subsection C, just to back up, I didn't want to gloss over too much. This section is showing the differences between the different types of court-martials. And so this whole subsection this whole section 104 is about general, special, and summary courts-martials, and it's the differences in who can convene them. So now back to on the top of page 7, subsection C, a summary court-martial may be convened by, and this remained as it was, any person who may convene a general or special courts-martial, or, and here's paragraph 2 that was added, any other person designated in the rules promulgated under this article. Then a subsection D added to this section 104 is more detail about one of these summary courts-martial. And a summary court-martial is an administrative process presided over by a current military judge advocate serving as the summary court officer. A conviction by summary court-martial shall not result in any sentence of confinement, nor shall it be considered a criminal conviction. So they sort of go in order from most severe to least severe. Back in subsection A, a general court-martial is the most serious, and then a middle, they have slightly different purposes, but is severity, general, special, and then to the summary one, which is just a it cannot result in, like it says, in the confinement or a criminal conviction. Moving to 19-12-105, all prosecutions under this article shall be by court martial, so that's specifying that they shall be by court martial, with the adjutant general having the sole power to determine by which method to proceed as far as which type of court martial. Subsection B was just if it just was basically fixing the grammar, so it's not upon the filing, but if a complaint is filed in the district court, then in the county where it goes, then the judge may issue warrants. And subsection C, that specifies that a qualified judge under this article or rules promulgated thereunder is who shall serve as a judge in all general or special courts martial and be empowered to act on all matters pertaining to that court. Subsection D is stating that the state shall be represented by a judge advocate, but if none is available, then the district or county attorney shall represent the state and prosecute cases that commenced in the courts. So that, you can see so many of these are working within the existing language, so that is not a change so much as it made it be the less conditional, so that shall be advocated by a judge advocate unless one is not available.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brown.
Just a quick question on that, Heather and/or Major Hinkle. We've had some discussion in this committee, specifically with our county attorney here and our district attorney, about some of the sharing of some of these prosecutorial authorities. With the language that we've just added in there on this particular section that Heather just went over, there's not any heartburn. Have we checked in with our county attorney and verified that there's not going to be major heartburn there and that we're not going to see major unintended consequences because this is already in statute? Or is this changing the direction of what our current statute says?
Major Hinkle.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Brown, since it was previously in statute, I don't believe that there will be any significant change, if any, to the current prosecuting attorneys that may end up with a military case. In fact, if anything, this clarifies that the military judge advocates will really take primary responsibility for handling any cases that might arise under this particular provision. And the intent is really to try to keep this as a military process unless there is some extraordinary reason why it would need to go to the prosecuting attorneys. And even then, they would still have the discretion to proceed with the case or not. And that's
perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Ms. Jarvis, would you like to continue?
Chairman.
Would you like to add anything?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This statement for clarification is to the major. This is only dealing with the National Guard. We're not dealing with F.E. Warren, the federal side. Is that correct?
Major Hinkle.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hutchings, that is correct. This only applies to the National Guard. The active duty military members at F.E. Warren, unless they are our National Guard members who happen to reside out there, are all covered by the Federal Uniform Code of Military Justice. So they would not be impacted by this at all.
Ms. Jarvis, would you like to continue?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So we left off at the bottom of page 8 that made it that they shall be represented by a judge advocate, and only if none is available, then would it go to the district or county attorney. So to answer Representative Brown's question, I did not check with them. It made it less likely to go to the county attorneys, in fact. At the top of page 9, subsection E, this is a new subsection E inserted in. So again, you'll see everything below it then will be pushed out on the numbering. To conduct any pretrial hearing required for a general court-martial, the adjutant general shall appoint a judge advocate who is not appointed to represent a party in the case to conduct that pretrial hearing. Subsection F, this is just going through to clarify and make it more correct. Subsection G, same thing. Subsection H, when I'm saying the subsections, I'm using the new number. Subsection H, when, well, again, this is just changing it to the court-martial, or changing the terminology to be grammatically correct. Subsection J was just the number change. Now subsection K is some more substantive, and it is specifying that if requested by the accused and authorized, given the charges and type of court-martial, a jury may be appointed. Any jury appointed shall consist of current Wyoming National Guard members of either service. In the event, and this is existing language, in the event that the pool of eligible court-martials for a National Guard court-martial under this article is insufficient to properly impanel the court-martial, then active and reserve members of the United States Armed Forces may be required to so serve. That was existing. Now moving to subsection, or to section 19-12-106, and the title, or just the kind of summary of what's in it, is at the bottom of page 10, but the substance here at the top of page 11 in subsection A, the substance is that the convening authority, appointed judge, or summary court officer may do the following. And that terminology is, we were trying to make it consistent with those from, if you remember back in section 104 earlier, in section 19-12-104, when we were describing who could convene a court, one of the different types of court-martial. Well, this is making it consistent as far as the list of folks and when it's giving their duties here. So it's the convening authority, appointed judge, or summary court officer may issue, and then the paragraphs below are just the things that they can do. And it's not, the substance isn't changing. It is both paragraph 1, paragraph 2, yeah, those are the only 2 paragraphs, have just the language being changed to be corrected. Moving at the top of page 12 to subsection B. Oh, and there was a renumbering, sorry, at the bottom of page 11, just the previous subsection B, that is paragraph 2 under subsection A. That's why you see at the top of page 12 that there is the new renumbering of subsection B. And this again gets that language consistent as far as the convening authority, appointed judge, or summary court officer may issue a warrant or detachment, or the things that they could already do in this paragraph. It's just making it consistent of who can do it. Subsection C, that's the same thing that's happening, is making it consistent, the list of the people who can do that which is listed already in the paragraph. Then moving on to page 13, subsection D and E, as newly numbered, as the same thing, listing the those who can do what's in the paragraph. The bottom of page 13, we are at section 19-12-107, and this is calling them jurors, because that's what they are, jurors of a court-martial, and members of the National Guard ordered to appear before a court-martial or other court, and members of the National Guard who are tried by court-martial. So each of those, it was just specifying making the language more precise so that it properly refers to who is having what done to them or done at the article or in the proceeding. Subsection B, that's the grammatic change. Same with as we move into section 108, the first subsection. And indeed, moving on to page 15, subsections B and C. And under subsection C, so there's paragraph 2, there is a clarification of the correct actor, which is by immediate payment of the fine in full in cash to the Deputy Director of the Wyoming Military Department to be paid to the state treasury. What's happened is that fines can be collected in that manner. And so this is just specifying that the payment would go to the Deputy Director of the Wyoming Military Department, who would then transfer it to the state treasury. And then the fines may also be collected as it describes in paragraph 3, upon failure of the convicted person to pay, then they may be held in county jail of the county wherein the court is held for 5 days. If the fine remains unpaid 60 days after release, the convicted person shall be again committed to the county jail of the county wherein the court is held for an additional 5 days. Now, I believe that those weren't just made up, because I know that Representative Hutchins was wondering, wanting to know things that were added. And I think that I'm just consulting a previous version of this bill. I believe that those came from a previous section of the code. So I'm just looking for that right now, but I see that you have your hand up, Senator Anderson.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, what does that 5 days do? That doesn't pay the fine. It's just a retention, if you will.
Ms. Jarvis, Major Hinkle.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Anderson, the intent on putting together this revision was actually to address what looked like a bit of a severe injustice. For example, an airman who would receive a $750 fine if confined for $1 a day would end up potentially in jail for 750 days, which is a little bit over 2 years. And so I don't recall that the suggestion for the 5 days came from anything specific. It was really just an intent to provide them some sort of punishment for not being able to pay the adjudged fine, but not so that it would be so excessive as to be a miscarriage of justice in that sense.
Senator Anderson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's just a punishment. It does not pay his fine.
Major.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Anderson, or Senator Anderson, that's correct. At that point, I think we would probably assume that they don't have the money to pay the fine.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Ms. Jarvis, do you have something else to add?
Mr. Chairman, no, I do not have something else to add. It is further on in the bill where there were provisions that moved up. This one, it did not come from elsewhere in the code. Okay, so moving to the top of page 16 and section 19-12-109, the changes here are that, it'd be good to read this in tandem with at the bottom of page 19. If y'all could look at those at the same time, you'll see the repealed sections, and you'll notice that 19-12-109A and C were repealed, and those were referring to different types of immunity that are that aren't appropriate or followed. And so this is specifying C, B, and D are now being made to be accurate to to reflect how the existing process is. When any crime against the laws of Wyoming or any political subdivision thereof is alleged to have been committed by any member of the National Guard, upon presentation of the proper warrant, he shall be apprehended by the military authorities and surrendered to the proper civil authorities of the county wherein the warrant was issued. If you remember earlier, back on page 5 was when this apprehension was defined. So this is just when a person can be apprehended. And then subsection D is just specifying that nothing herein grants immunity from service of warrants issued upon a charge or complaint alleging a violation under the next section that we'll get to, nor shall any such immunity prevent prosecution by authorities after termination of the period of any duty status for which the immunity was effective. So it just specifies, it's just slight changes from what is existing there, but it's just specifying the terminology of any duty status as opposed to active duty status. Subsection E of this section, moving on to page 17, this just corrects the terminology to be more widely applicable. And then moving to the final section, which is 19-12-110. This, in existing code, this section used to list a whole smattering of types of things that would be considered crimes. But because at the very beginning of the tightening up to just say that it refers to the military code, the Uniform Code of Military Justice that's in effect at the time of the offense, the duplicative list of crimes was taken out and reduced to be these 2 crimes. And so there's members of the Wyoming National Guard charged with the following offenses may be tried and punished as herein provided. And paragraph 1 says that, calls out that it's a crime for a Wyoming National Guard to use contemptuous words against the president, vice president, a member of Congress, the secretary of defense, a secretary of a department, a governor, or a member of legislature of any state, territory, or other possession of the United States. That's not new. It's just leaving that one in the list that existed. And then it is pulling up what the punishment for that shall be. And you'll note in the staff comment that punishment was not just created out of whole cloth. It was actually subsection B that said the punishment for these list of crimes that were above it shall be this. But now, since there's not the list, it just applies it to this one paragraph directly. Then the next paragraph, which is paragraph 17 in Roman numerals at the bottom of page 18, there aren't 17 crimes above it. In fact, you'll note on page 19 in that repeal section that a 19-12-110, A 2 through 16 are repealed, but the next consecutive number to be able to insert the crime is this one. So that's why we are now up at such a high number when we go from number 1 to 17. Any number, and this insertion is any member of the Wyoming National Guard who resists or aids in resisting the execution of lawful process in any area declared to be in a state of actual or threatened insurrection, or who aids or attempts the rescue or escape of another from lawful custody or confinement, or who resists or aids in resisting any force ordered out by the governor to execute the laws to suppress actual or prevent threatened insurrection or to repeal invasion, is guilty of a felony punishable by imprisonment in the state penitentiary for not less than 1 year nor more than 10 years. Now, again, this crime was not just made up out of whole cloth. It was the previous subsection F. But so for organizing, because now subsection A just lists a couple of crimes that are called out specifically, separate from, or, instead of listing all of a bunch of things duplicative of the uniform code. That's why it is now subsection 17. Now, moving to the middle of 19, page 19, is subsection D, and that is, it just specifies the courts martial, and then also that the Uniform Code of Military Justice and the procedure therein, except as superseded by the rules that are promulgated according to this article, is what applies. Now, section 2 are the repeals, and I addressed most of them were in that 19-12-110 and all of the different crimes that were listed and that were made to be just instead of duplicating what was in the uniform code. And so they're simplified to what's there now. Then I also had called out the 19-12-109A and C. Those were in that immunity section. And 19-12-104, that's the types of, that was the section, if you recall, that had the types of courts martial. And B3 was, B3 specifically was who could convene them. And you'll note that at the time that we were looking at 104, it was clarified who could convene those different types of courts martial. And then this act is effective July 1st, 2021.
Any questions from the committee of Ms. Jarvis? Seeing none, thank you. Comments, Major General.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, in an effort to sort of simplify this for me, let me just put this out and see if it helps it or not. If I show you right here is the manual of courts martial, and if you look across this, on this side is Uniform Court of Military Justice, and this is the court martial. A lot of verbiage. We found it inefficient to just replace the word governor with that of the president as you go through this. This was written all for the active component in Title 10 personnel. And so as we look at trying to implement the Uniform Code of Military Justice, it became evident that there were processes in there that simply we were not able to do as the state of Wyoming. Now, we don't do very many court martials in Wyoming. The last time we did one was in 1963, and as actually the adjutant general that was court-martialed over a travel voucher. So we don't do it very often, but we attempted to look into this because we had an incident we thought was rose to the level of a court martial. And as we looked at trying to implement it, we found that what was adopted back in 1998 was simply not capable of being done in Wyoming. I will tell you that this bill does not invest the adjutant general or the governor with any additional authorities. All those authorities that are in are the ones that are in here. What this attempts to do is change a little the processes so that we can actually execute what this book says in terms of how we select a judge, how we select, how we go through the process of writing rules, those kind of things. It also does, when we adopted the code back in 1998, we adopted 1998's codes and it doesn't evolve. This bill will allow, as the UCMJ evolves, for us to evolve as well. So we don't have to come back to the legislature every time UCMJ gets changed to make a change. So if I were to sort of sum it up, it would say, hey, there's no additional authorities. It allows us to basically Wyomingize this document so that we are able to do a court martial if we decide to do one. And it just makes it so that we don't have to go back to you every time that it changes to get that done. Hopefully that's helpful in sort of resolving this. It is a lot of verbiage. I know LSO and the Attorney General spent a lot of time trying to get this into a manageable document. And you know, my hat's off to Heather and the team for doing that. But hopefully that helps. And certainly, sir, I can answer any questions if the committee has them, or probably Karen can answer any questions if the committee has them. Thank you, sir.
Major Hinkle or General Porter, do you have any questions for them? Committee? Seeing none? Do you have a motion on the bill? Oh, Senator Pappas.
I think these changes are, you know, as a former military member, make a whole lot of sense, and streamlines the authority and the understanding of the process. And so I would like to take the opportunity to make a motion to approve to forward this bill on.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second, Representative O'Hearn. So does anybody have any comments on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, do you not have any public comment on this particular bill? I didn't think we did, but I just wanted to make sure.
I'm not sure. Do we have any? Mary Beth?
Mr. Chairman, we do not.
Okay. Very good. Representative Brown, you need to keep me in shape here, kind of make sure you got the whip out. So anyway, any comments? Okay, any amendments to the bill? I don't want to go over this page by page, but any amendments to the bill? Seeing none. Mary Beth, would you call the roll call, please?
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote on 21 LSO 15 version 5. Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Hutchings.
Aye.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz.
Aye.
Representative Brown.
Aye.
Representative Crank.
Aye.
Representative McGuire.
He's excused at the moment.
Representative Newsom.
Aye.
Representative Obermuller.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Western.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Eklund.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Von Flatern.
Aye. So it has passed the committee unanimously, Wyoming Military Code revisions. And so we'll move on to the next one, which actually.
Chairman, does the Senate want to take that one first?
We assigned those, so we don't know yet. Well, we'll do this one. This one will be easy.
Mr. Chairman, I do have that list, but it's scheduled to look at the end of tomorrow as far as the tally of the different bills and when they'll go to where.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll do it tomorrow afternoon. So does anybody need a break at this moment? Nope. We'll move on. Next one on our agenda is.
Good, how are you? Well, windy enough for you? Yeah. Mind if we try it for tomorrow? Sure.
Traumatic brain injury.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn this over to Major Anderson. Heather, do you want me to stop screen sharing again on this one as well?
Mr. Chairman, General Porter, I think that after the presentation, it looks like there's a slide from which you plan to speak. And then after that, when we get to the bill draft would be good, please. Thank you.
Good. We'll drive on there. Let me turn it over to Major Anderson.
Major Anderson, would you like?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Hutchings.
Senator Anderson has a hot mic.
All right. He's Senator Anderson, I can't see him at this moment, but I assume he does.
It looks like LSO muted him.
Okay. So Senator Major Anderson, do you want to talk about this?
Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you for your time. I will speak on this joint resolution regarding traumatic brain injury. This is a request for a joint resolution, and I have that pulled up here in front of me. I believe all of you have it. It's 21 LSO 0017. I'm looking at working draft 0.4. The crux of this issue is there is a request for the passage of a joint resolution for traumatic brain injuries. This resolution would go to Congress and the powers that be that would discuss additional options and additional treatments for traumatic brain injury. The big push on this one is what they are calling HBOT, or hyperbolic oxygen treatment and therapy. There's been a lot of promise that the use of HBOT treatment, the use of oxygen is able to help repair the brain from TBIs or traumatic brain injuries from military members that have suffered from this in the past. Again, this is a question, or excuse me, a request for a joint resolution. And going through here as well. I don't know if we need to read it line for line.
Probably not. Do you hear?
There we go. I apologize. We're trying to not
Get rid of
share
this
the
screen
screen.
sharing.
Yeah, technology is great. But what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is at least touch the high points in the resolution that's proposed. The first part is the national suicide rate is indicated here in the resolution is 22 veterans every day, and that TBIs have a contributing factor to these suicide and other issues as well. That TBIs and post-traumatic stress disorder involve damage to the brain, and then this HBOT treatment that they've been discussing has promising signs of a therapy that could positively impact those damaged areas of the brain. With that, the resolution is that the resolution would be, if passed, pushed to Congress to encourage them to hastily, I don't think the word is hastily, swiftly, I apologize, enact legislation to provide veterans for access to treatment for TBIs and PTSD that include HBOT type treatment. With that, I stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Questions of Major Anderson? Seeing none, do I have a motion on this bill? Public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Senator's 5 minutes. Can we have public comment on this bill? Mary Beth?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, go ahead with public comment.
Mr. Chairman, we do. We have Denny Seedlock and I believe Grady Birdsong available.
Mr. Sedlock, would you like to go first?
Yes. Having been a counselor and working with veterans, myself a war veteran, working with PTSD, TBI, and the suicide issue, oxygen is the healer for the body. You take away oxygen, the body tissue dies. In fact, the body itself can die. But by providing the oxygen, the brain remodels itself. And the oxygen helps the brain remodel itself. So depending on the severity of damage that somebody might experience, at least they have some additional options to work with to help them with affect regulation, with mood, and decrease anger, rage, and the thoughts of suicide and that kind of thing. So in my professional opinion, HBOT is a significant tool to assist the veteran work with the terrible issues of TBI and the severe PTSD they experience. It helps with remodeling the brain, and it gives them an additional little advantage in their therapy to gain some affect regulation in their life and to have a better life.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Sedlock? Thank you. Mr. Birdsong, do you have a comment?
Yes, sir. Denny and I have worked with the Healing Our Heroes Foundation here in the Louisville, the Denver metropolitan area, Louisville, Colorado. We're veteran advocates associated with the Treat Now organization. Anyway, we're going after these state resolutions all over the United States to put the pressure on the VA to incorporate HBOT, as we call it, along with counseling into their program, and they're steadily easing towards that right now. We've had at our
clinic there in Louisville, Colorado. We've treated approximately 400 veterans from the Middle Eastern wars, and with about a 90 to 95% success ratio. And this clinic is one of a kind in the United States. And the success comes from the fact that we're healing the injury with the HBOT treatment in the pressurized chambers with the oxygen, the pure oxygen. And we're also counseling the veteran. So whether it be a male or a female. That's the real success of this. And we're trying to get the VA to recognize this, and they've just passed a bill recently here in October. Let's see, Senate Bill, let's see, where was it here? That's 785. It's called Commander John Scott Hannon's Veterans Mental Health Care Improvement Act. Whereby they're going to start doing analysis and trials on this HBOT. Denny and I have been working with Senator Buck here in Colorado, and he has written a letter. He's gotten all of the senators here in Colorado on board to write a letter to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Robert Wilkie, to incorporate this clinic into their trials under Section 702 of that Senate bill. But anyway, I'll let it go at that. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee? Mr. Birdsong? Seeing none, seeing none. Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Thank you. Senator Anderson?
Mr. Chairman, I had one question. He's already treated 400 veterans at that facility. What will this do for Wyoming? Will we have a facility in Wyoming? Is that what this resolution is trying to accomplish?
Thank you, Mr. Birdsong.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I don't know how well. Louisville's what, about Denny, about 60 miles away from Cheyenne.
About 75, I think.
75. Anyway, we take kids. I call them kids. They're young men and women from all over the United States. We have a facility there where we can house them, feed them, and put them through the 40 sessions that they need to go through. And it would serve as a regional hyperbaric oxygen therapy institute for the area, for the region. Now, as far as what y'all want to do up there in Wyoming, I don't know.
Senator Anderson, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think probably we'd want to put one in Buffalo where the skilled nursing facility is. I don't know, but.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none. Do we have any, Mary Beth, do we have any other people that want to speak on this?
Mr. Chairman, we don't have any others.
Okay, I will entertain a motion from the Senator Steinmetz. Motion.
I second it.
And second by Senator Hutchings.
Got it.
All right. So any other amendments to this resolution?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Eklund, Co-Chairman Eklund, sorry.
Yes. So something that we just caught is in the catch title. We don't have the post-traumatic stress disorder in the title. So I'd like to amend that we have traumatic brain injury treatments, or put PTSD into that title in some fashion.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. Do I have a, yes, Heather?
Mr. Chairman, if it's the committee's pleasure, we are limited in this was my oversight. I was, and Chairman Eklund and I were talking about that, and we are limited to the number of characters. So if I haven't yet counted out what will fit, but if the committee might entertain a conceptual amendment so that I can get in there how it fits, that would be great.
Put the right number of characters in the title.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Does everybody understand that? I see that. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Second, Hutchings. Second the motion. So we have a motion and a second, and I really won't go through this page by page. Does anybody have any amendments to this bill? Resolution, I should say. If not, Mary Beth, would you call the roll call, please?
Mr. Chairman, did you want to dispose of that motion, make sure that it passed before I take a roll call?
That's true. It didn't even take the amendment. And all in favor, please raise your hand in front of your camera.
I'm raising my hand. I'm just gonna.
Okay, Senator Hutchings. I was wondering about that. Okay, it's unanimous.
Hand raised. Okay.
All in favor, all no's, please raise their hand. No no's. Okay, it's unanimous. Sorry about that, Mary Beth. You're very correct.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote on 21 LSO 17 version 4 as amended. Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Hutchings.
Aye.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz.
Aye.
Representative Brown.
Aye.
Representative Crank.
Aye.
Representative McGuire.
Excused.
Representative Newsom. Aye. Representative Obermuller.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Western.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Eklund.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Von Slater.
Aye. So traumatic brain injury treatments and PTSD has passed the committee. Our next is the Veterans Home, the skilled nursing facility in Buffalo. Do we have somebody that can do that?
Sure, this is Mr. Kim Shepard. Can talk about the timeline for skilled nursing and the progress of the construction. I know my screen's kind of going crazy right now. I don't know about everybody else. Sorry, sir.
The screen share is bouncing back and forth.
There, well,
if it's not going to cooperate, we may just, because I believe everybody has slides. I'll keep trying to get it going, but go ahead, Mr. Shepard, if it's the chairman's pleasure.
Yes, please. And
okay,
get rid of this, and so we could screen share quit bouncing.
For a second there.
It's still bouncing. So yes, please bring it back. Mr. Shepard.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my pleasure this morning to talk to you about the skilled nursing facility. With me are Mr. Ryan Scranton from State Construction and Mr. Franz Fuchs from State Health. And if we have specific questions that they can answer, I'd be happy to allow them to do that. Bottom line, things are going along really well. As I think the committee knows, Scout Construction was selected as a general contractor. They have now become a member of the team in this acquisition process, and construction, thanks to Mother Nature, construction is moving along very well at the facility. I think the first slide you have there is the timeline. And as you can see that the occupancy remains in May of 22. We feel very confident that we're going to be able to do that and reach that. I don't see any obstacles to making that happen. Are there any questions on the timeline?
Questions, committee? Mr. Shepherd, continue.
Okay, so next, and I'd like to ask Mr. Scranton we've got some slides of the actual construction, and I would like to allow him to remark on each of those.
Mr. Scranton, you're still bouncing on the screen share.
See that?
Mr.
Ryan, are you there?
We have slides on our books and on our computer.
Very good. Good morning, committee. Ryan Scranton, project manager for the State Construction Department. I'm gonna jump over to my slides as well so I can talk to the pictures. Basically, they mobilized, Skull Construction mobilized on September 28th. What you see here in this first slide with the motor grader is the excavation for the footings for Cottage 3. Cottage 3 is the northernmost cottage in the loop there. So they got underway immediately. They've got the I think as we go to the next slide, you'll see preparation for footings and pads. The pads in the middle are for concrete or for steel columns. And here on the third picture, you're seeing some of the concrete pads and foundation walls. And the final picture there is all the foundation walls are up and they've been poured. So progress since the pictures here on Cottage 3, all the walls are done and the foundation forms have been stripped. They are starting to do the MEP rough-ins and pictures I can't show you yet. They've also started the excavation for Cottage 2. They should be getting that done early this week, and they will start prepping for the footings and pads on Cottage 2. As we look forward into the next several months and the progression of Cottage 3 and Cottage 2, Cottage 3, they're going to start doing the steel erection and concrete deck, and really the steel work will take us probably through the next 3 months. So we're on schedule. Still looking at 20 months, and things are going really well. And as Colonel Shepherd had mentioned, so far the weather's been favorable, and I almost hate to say that because I don't want to curse it, but that's all I have, and I will stand for any questions.
Seeing you curse the weather, so we're good. Any questions of Mr. Scranton? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ryan and Mr. Shepherd. I appreciate that. And now we're on to
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Representative Eklund. I think you can hear me okay. I just kind of wanted to interject something here. We've got Don Burkhart's sitting in on the meeting and listening to things. There's a couple of reminders. I will be chairing a different committee. We've got a whole new committee coming on. We have a sailor and soldiers home there in Buffalo. It's in need of renovation. Keep that on the back burner. That will cost the state to fix that. As we move along with the skilled nursing center, if it works well and like we think it will, we can we can continue and build others of these around the state at some point in time. Those would be built with loans from the state of Wyoming that would be paid back by the as the skilled nursing veterans are being cared for. So keep that in mind, keep it on the back burner, and don't forget renovations we need for that sailor and soldier's home.
Which is looking pretty good, other than it's like an 8-foot ceiling in most of it. So the ceiling needs to be moved in some manner because it's a public building, and you know, used to allow smoking in there. So there's a lot of smoke stains around, but it needs to be remodeled at some point. So right now, Heather, Mary Beth, do you have somebody waiting?
Mr. Chairman, I do think it is part of the veterans facilities that is anticipated for the update during this section of what is happening with the level 1-2 studies of on the soldiers and sailors home, I believe. Just as far as an update on what's happening.
We've done 1 and 2.
They're happening presently, I believe.
Oh, okay. Mr. Shepherd, is that correct?
Well, actually, sir, the studies are all but complete. If we want to get into the specifics, I'd again turn it over to Mr. Scranton, but basically they're done, and you know, the next step is really in the hands of the state as to what we want to do with those studies.
So, Mr. Scranton, do we have a way forward as far as what these studies show us?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the last committee meeting, we presented you some conceptual pictures and plans of what the architects and engineers had completed for the level 1 and 2. They've provided us with a project estimate that has been presented to the State Building Commission. It's been presented to the Wyoming Department of Health. And at this time, I don't think that Health really had the appetite to ask the committee to sponsor a bill. And I don't think that they have the appetite to ask the governor to fund the project. So the way forward, I don't know. That's a discussion that needs to be had. We can certainly fund level 3 design and hold off on construction, but you know, I really left that in Health's hands as to move that project forward, whether that be with the committee or with the governor.
So, Mr. Scranton, even to do level 3 design work, you would still need some money in a bill to give you that money. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Okay. And the health and labor and health has this in your committee? Mr. Scranton?
Mr. Chairman, typically, yeah, I think that health does report to the Labor and Health Committee. And so I think they would, I'm making an assumption here, but I would assume that they would take it to that committee.
That's all right, Mr. Scranton. We can do the crystal ball anytime you'd like. Mr. Shepherd, do you have any other comments about this?
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman, other than, again, we're open to any questions that you may have.
I think Senator Anderson has a question.
Mr. Chairman, I'm thinking this might be for Mr. Scranton. The one of the extras on this project was a water line that would come in and service that entire facility. Have you figured out what that water line is and how much it's going to be? And are there any other increases to the project or decreases to the project that you've seen so far?
Mrs. Scranton?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, to answer the last half of your question, the budget hasn't changed, increased or decreased at this time. There may be at some point some realized savings. To speak to the water line, we've finalized an agreement with the city and the county. I believe the design for the water line is complete. The design engineer is working through permitting with DEQ and looking at going out for bid for that late this year or early next year.
Thank you, Mr. Scranton. Did that answer your question, Senator Anderson? Okay. Other comments from the committee? Mr. Shepherd or Mr. Scranton, do you have anything to add?
No, committee.
Again, I think we're good.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to wind and solar, siting wind and solar facilities near military facilities. Or Mr. Googles, do you want to talk at the moment? Mr. Martin Googles? I'm sorry.
Sorry, Chairman, that's Martin Googles is my last name.
Googles? Okay.
Yes.
Would you like to talk at this time about military facilities?
Yes, we would. I would like to cede some time first to Mr. David Salazar.
Mr. Salazar, I don't see him. As Mary Beth, have you let him in?
I'm on with Martin
okay.
Google. So
Sorry.
thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for allowing this time. I'm here just making public comment. Sorry. I'm here making public comment just as a concerned citizen, and making sure. I know that a few members of the committee received some letters from myself as well as some other members of the community, and may have read letters to the editor that were published over the weekend and last week. I did, and I thank Senator Hutchings for bringing it up. I wanted to make it clear that our funding is 25% of the Wyoming Cowboy Challenge Academy's total funding is paid for by the state, and it's what was requested this year for next year is 1.25 million. The federal government, the National Guard Bureau, then matches that with 75% funds. So we're looking at a total budget moving forward of 4.4 million. And again, 3/4 of that being provided by the federal government. If we don't make that state match, the state loses that entire investment for the program. It's important to note that this is an investment not only in our young people, but in employees of our state here. I'm sure you've seen the proposed cuts of those. I believe it's 61 positions, 51 are from the Wyoming Cowboy Challenge Academy. We currently have 41 of those actually in place right now. 10 of them are either waiting to be hired or were approved but have not yet been filled because of the funding. Now, that also puts the program in a tenuous position, because if we're even talking about cutting the program, then people start looking elsewhere for employment, or they get offered a position from us, and turn it down because they don't know what the future of the program is and whether they should leave their stable employment to come here. And again, just kind of putting that out there. But the 3 million plus million that comes from the National Guard Bureau essentially pays for the salaries of the folks working here. We've been in business here for 15 years. 2021, January 2021 will be our 15th year serving the state and the youth of the state of Wyoming. And it would be a real shame if we were to cut such a fantastic program. And understand, in the grand scheme of things, there are so many considerations that this committee and others need to make for the betterment of the state. We are not, WCCA is not above taking a cut and doing our part the same way other schools are. When we struggle, we all struggle together as a state and as a team, and we have to do what we have to do to maintain until things get better. I thank you again for your time. And does anyone have any questions of me? Martin, do you have some words?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Joint Committee, I would just like to make a few quick points to kind of rationalize the entire program in kind of a nutshell. I was an automobile dealer here in the state of Wyoming for 28 years. And when I sold my store, I set a goal that I wanted to find a job that I could make a difference, and two, that I could help young people. And when I was first hired here at the Cowboy Challenge, I found immediately that I could fulfill both goals in this position. And bottom line is the young people that come to our program, and you guys have a letter, all the members of the committee have a letter that was originally put up by our director here of the program that illustrates many of the budgetary issues and things like that. But I'm here to talk about the importance of what this does for young people. And bottom line is, if a young person comes here and graduates, this small investment made by the state and large investment made by the federal government pays for itself 10 times over. When young people have success, this program was purely created to help non-traditional learners, basically people who public school is not for everyone. And this program takes those young people in a quasi-military situation in 5.5 months. And our job is to either obtain them credits to help catch them up and send them back to high school to graduate, or to graduate with a comparable GED and become a viable member of the community. And as a perfect example, I think that if one young person graduates from this program, they will come back, and our small investment will be paid back to the state tenfold by having a quality job, being a good member of the community. Many of the young people here that attend our program maybe have some issues with the law, maybe have spent time in a juvenile detention center. It's different things like that, that with the success of this program and the minimal investment made by the state, I just think that, well, I don't think, I know, because I've seen it firsthand, that when a young person graduates from the program, they have found new ways to provide success within their families, in their community, and in having a job. And it just makes them a great upstanding young person that presents a very viable future for everyone involved. And it comes back to our state, like I said earlier, beyond tenfold. They become good taxpayers, good members of their communities and family, and they don't go to places like state prisons, place like that, where many people without high school educations end up. And I thank the committee for their time. And I would also like to thank the committee staff for working with someone that's not always been in this process and helping me get on this schedule. Thank you very much.
Mr. Goebbels, was the 4.4 million that Mr. Salazar said, was that for a 1 year or 2 year biennium salary or biennium budget?
4.4.
Mr. Chairman, and so it's $4.5 million is the annual budget for the program. Of that, 1.1 million comes from the state of Wyoming and 3.4 from the federal government, sir.
Okay, thank you. Comments from the committee? Comments? Yes, Senator Steinmetz, do you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I have a question, and that is, a couple of years ago, we passed the endowment account for the Wyoming Cowboy Challenge Academy, because this has come up before, and we all understand this is a good program and we're concerned about it. And so this committee took that bill up that I had drafted. So I was just wondering, have there been any contributions? If so, how is there an amount in there? We knew it would take a while for that to build up, but I was just wondering if there is any private contributions, and if so, what those are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Salazar, do you have any answer for that?
I do not. And in fact, I know we would have known. I believe the balance right now is zero. I have not heard of any contributions made, and those have not been made known to anyone here at the program. Although we are working with our foundation, as you all know, we cannot accept those donations directly. We do work with a registered 501c3 in the state, the Wyoming National Guard Youth Foundation, who are launching a plan to actively begin collecting funds to donate directly to that endowment.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Senator Simon? Yes. Okay. Other questions, Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this a year-round residential program, or is it more like a school year? That maybe is addressed somewhere in the information we got, but just curious. Thank you.
Certainly, ma'am. So we operate 2 5.5-month cycles. One begins in January, usually around the first week of January, and one begins the first week of July, immediately after the 4th of July weekend. So in essence, it is a year-round school. There is a month and a half there where we don't have students in-house, but we do use that time for training, lesson plan development, and modification and whatnot. So essentially, the program is 22 weeks long. So when a young man or woman enrolls in the program, they come to us either greatly deficient in high school credits, and we educate them on taking the high school equivalency test. If they are in a position to go back to school, then we use that time to put them into a pretty intensive online program that's tailored to them, so that they can recover those credits, rejoin their cohorts back in their home schools, and graduate with them. That's our ultimate goal.
Thank you. That answer your question, Representative Newsom? All right, perfect. Mr. Salazar, unfortunately, this is an executive, we hadn't brought this up, and that's an executive administration type of decision. And so we don't have any bill to support that at this point. Somebody can certainly bring a private bill, but I think you're caught in the fact that we're trying to cut the government, and unfortunately, you are one of the ones that got cut. You're not constitutionally protected as K-12 is, and so I would say, Mr. Salazar, unfortunately, you are going to get the first one to be axed, because we are paying state money for that program. So any other comments? You have anything else, Mr. Salazar, Mr. Goebbels? Co-Chairman Eklund.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I I guess something I'd like to add to the conversation is that the Cowboy Challenge has been a real favorite by the legislature. It's been supported. We had a cut maybe 2 years ago, I think. And I can't remember what the cut was, but it was enough of a cut that it would have split the Cowboy Challenge down. There would have only been one class of cadets graduating, and we refunded that then. And I'm hoping that in the few months to follow, we'll be able to find a way of funding this. And there's quite a bit of conversation that has to go on, because our budget is in worse shape than anybody can imagine. And as Senator von Flatern just said, we got to fund the constitutional things. Anything extra makes it very difficult. I agree with all that was said. There are some students that are just simply not going to work out in the standard education, K through 12 education. We don't have a lot of private education either. So this has been an alternative that has worked out really well. I personally know 3 students that have been through it and have benefited greatly by it, and their families did too. And I think they're doing fairly well. I'm not sure about one, but 2 of them are doing okay. And I don't think they would have without your program. So we're hoping to figure out a way of doing this, but understand that the governor's job of making cuts has been difficult. This one here has just been gut wrenching. I don't know what else to say about it, but we'll see what we can do in the months that follow this. It'll probably have to be a private bill. I'm not sure how else to do it at this point.
Senator Steinmetz, did you have something?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I think this is the beginning of the conversation, and we do need to look at this carefully before we just dismiss it as a done deal, because the legislature still has to act. We do have some incredibly hard choices to make in this upcoming session, and we'll have to watch and see how that pans out. But the more information that you could give to the members of this committee and the Appropriations Committee, that will be helpful. And I'm sure that this is just the beginning of the conversation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Salazar, Mr. Goebbels, do you have anything else to say?
In closing, I just had a real quick statement. Basically, when I first came here, you read the literature, involved, you go through your training and you get to do your job. It's been a great experience, but I've truly learned that this is a life-saving program in some situations. And it is not a handout program by any means. It's a real hand-up program. And that's something that you rarely see sometimes in government, especially with a program like this. This gives young people a chance to have a future. And I hope we can find a way to work together to keep this program up and running, because for some people, if they do drop out of school, if they do are actually removed from the public school process, this is their last chance. And many kids do take on this last chance and learn positively. And it can, in some cases, truly save a life or to make a great person in their community. And in closing, that's all I have.
Mr. Goebbels and Mr. Salazar, appreciate you guys speaking to us. You had a lot good to say, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments? That ought to be it. Okay. So we're on to wind and solar facilities siting near military facilities. Ms. Jarvis or Co-Chairman Eklund, would you like to address this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think I would probably Maybe I could start. I'm not sure if we have Senator Boner on the line.
Yes, he's right down there. I see him. I see him now.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah, Senator, would you be okay with going first and kind of bringing us up to date with what's happened since
Sure.
we left this bill?
Senator Boner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for having me. It's good to see the Joint Transportation Committee. Certainly remember this is one of my first committees, and brings back fond memories joining you here today. So we're picking up on an issue that was a corporations bill primarily, dealing with, as you know, obviously they usually have jurisdiction over how we site energy facilities to include wind energy. And so this is something I think the House side of the committee had some experience with at the very end of the session last February, or maybe even into March. And the senators will maybe remember some floor discussion on this, because this was primarily handled through corporations. And so we're talking about siting wind turbines within a certain distance of nuclear launch facilities which house nuclear missiles, and their controlling alert facilities. This is an active duty issue. It has nothing to do with the National Guard, to be clear. And just a little bit of background. The reason why I got involved with this as a senator from Platte and Commerce counties is, you know, I have experience on both sides of the issue. We're just completing a wind farm up here north of Douglas. Some of that project is on my family's property. We've been neck deep in construction of a wind farm. All that entails for the past several months, and we're approaching our operational capacity here, or initial operating capacity here very soon, within the next week or two. I also spent 6 years in the active duty Air Force, most of it at Warren Air Force Base as a missileer, as a nuclear missile crew commander. I have 147 nuclear alerts under my belt, not that I was counting. So I have experience, operational real life experience on both sides of this issue. And so I'm just going to go over what we did to remind everybody, and then give you an update as to what the status quo is on this topic. And like I said, I think it's important to take a step back and understand that the best way you understand what we did in Senate File 36 is through the permitting process that a wind farm has to go through to become reality. And that's something that happens at the local, state, and national level. And so you want to break it down in relevant parts to our discussion here. It's, you know, wind farm has to go through the Industrial Siting Council, which is set up. It's under DEQ actually. And as a part of that process, you have to get the approval of the local county commissioners. So it's kind of a hybrid local and state process that you have to gain approval of the county commissioners and the governor appointed Industrial Siting Council. There's also a process at the federal level through the Federal Aviation Administration. And the reason that's relevant here is that the Department of Defense, if they're going to be affected by, in this case, wind turbines, they have an opportunity to provide input through the Department of Defense clearinghouse. And so that's just to spend some time contrasting the two processes, Mr. Chairman. Industrial Siting Council has an opportunity for local input. There are several publicly available meetings where they take public input both at the county commissioners and at the Industrial Siting Council. Whereas the FAA process, excuse me, is completely eternal to the Department of Defense. There's basically a political appointee in the Pentagon making decisions as to whether a project would move forward or not. And so that's an important distinction. And that's a nature of the compromise that we found in Senate File 36, which is that we're going to try to find a compromise at the state and local level where there's opportunity for public input. But also, most importantly, there's reference to the 2 nautical miles. I know that's been a huge focus of attention in some quarters, but a huge difference here is that what we did in Senate File 36, it says within that 2 nautical miles of the launch facilities or the alert facilities, that's going to be where the negotiation takes place. It's not a hard and fast, you can't build anything at all. And so there's been some comparisons to an existing 1,200-foot restrictive easement, which the Air Force negotiated with the landowners in the 60s. And that's just a completely inadequate comparison because it's not a hard and fast no-go zone within 2 nautical miles. That's the area in which the negotiation takes place. And that negotiation is going to be monitored or ultimately approved, the results of negotiation approved by the county commissioners and ultimately the Industrial Siting Council. Contrast that with if the military goes through the FAA, through the Pentagon, and they provide input to the Federal Aviation Administration, they get whatever they want. They can have no building at all, no construction at all within that 2 nautical mile radius. So those are the 2 important distinctions between what we did at the state level. It's much more friendly to industry. It's much more favorable to the property rights of the landowners because they do have an opportunity for public input, and it's a negotiation. It's just not a no. That's what we did. I hope that's clear. And I'm just going to pause there, Mr. Chairman, to make sure everybody understands what we did before I give you the update here. Because I think that's, like I said, it's something that this committee doesn't usually deal with. Usually this would be in corporations or minerals. So I'm just going to pause there, make sure I understand what we did with Senate File 36 and especially how that's different from the other alternative, which is the Air Force going through their chain of command with no public input whatsoever and hoping the Pentagon listens to them.
So questions for Senator Boner? Seeing none. Oh, yes, Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Brian, I appreciate the idea that it could be a one way or this way, and that those are the only 2 ways. And I tend to disagree. So I would like to know what type of other discussion was being held. I know when we left session, I was in constant communication with Representative Cheney's office, as well as Senator Barrass's office, trying to work on this at a federal level, because that's where my heartburn comes from. We're talking about a federal mission here that the state is trying to correct. And I have some serious issues with that. So maybe if you can give me a little bit of understanding as to why in the world this came down to a legislative mandate as opposed to discussing this at the federal level and working this through the Department of Defense and trying to negotiate this with the local landowners as opposed to the state coming down and putting a heavy hand down on these landowners.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we'll get to that later. I just want to make sure that we understood where we've been before we get to the path forward. And to be clear, that's not an accurate statement that the state's putting a heavy hand on the landowners. We're trying to prevent a much heavier hand, which is the Pentagon coming in and saying no development at all. So that's not an accurate statement. We want to make sure we understand that. This is the best we can do, understanding what the federal process is, and we're trying to prevent that big hammer from coming down and providing some relief for the landowners and for developers. And so there's a path forward, I think, that involves our congressional delegation, and we might have to get a little creative, but there's opportunities to be creative with the ground-based strategic deterrent coming online, and with potentially a new administration that's going to be much more friendly to alternative energy development and frankly, probably a little less supportive of the military. So I guess Representative Brown, you'll have a chance to, maybe there's opportunities there that weren't there with the current administration. Ultimately the person, and I'll talk about it later. We'll talk about the update and what's happened since we last talked. But I think there's opportunities with the new administration to come back to the compromise that we had, the much lighter, more nuanced policy that's much more balanced than simply the Air Force going up their chain of command, which, as far as why that hasn't happened already, it's because it's, one part of the military, and I say this as a former missileer, the operational side is very efficient, very effective. The bureaucratic side is a mess. So frankly, the Air Force, the missileers didn't know that they had this process available to them to go through the DoD clearinghouse. And so once we knew that they're going to figure that out, we tried to find a compromise at the state level to help give some relief to the landowners and to the developers.
So Senator Boner, did this change? I mean, has stuff changed since you ran that?
Yeah. I guess I'll jump into that then, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, that exact circumstance we're trying to prevent, that ended up happening. So the Air Force went ahead and went through their chain of command. They were successful in getting, I believe, it was Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, which is the level of bureaucracy right below the Secretary of Defense. So pretty far up there, near as I can tell. And they got a hard and fast 2-mile exclusion zone where there's not going to be any construction through that Federal Aviation Administration process. So I guess we'll have to engage with our congressional delegation a little bit more if we're going to be effective, because the Air Force went ahead and
Senator
figured
Boner,
out.
was it height or was it altitude or elevation, I should say, on the ground? Was it elevation or was it distance?
It's a distance from the launch facilities as you look at it on a map. So I guess a horizontal distance from the launch facilities, you draw a 2 nautical mile circle around that. And according to the federal government, there will be no construction whatsoever of wind turbines within that 2 nautical mile radius. And like I said, this is exactly the circumstance we were trying to prevent. And as disappointed as I am that the Air Force went ahead and took this option, I think that there's an opportunity moving forward to work with a new administration who's going to be more friendly to alternative energy and maybe not as supportive as the military as the current one, to bring them back to the compromise that the Air Force, after all, did agree to last February. So I think that we have a good compromise that we can use as an opportunity to kind of get things back a little bit more balanced.
So Senator Boner, are they going to compensate the rancher and the farmer for the loss of land?
No, Mr. Chairman, not as it stands right now, and that's what I might, as a path forward, I think we could consider. And I know that was discussed before, and I think we have to look at it. I think we have to be cautious because there's lots of things that can limit the development of a wind farm. For example, if there's any sort of bird nest within the wind development, that's a 1 mile radius that you can't develop around that bird nest for certain species. So there's lots of, and if we want to go down that road, I think we should be consistent and look at all the ways private properties or landowners' property rights can be infringed upon, and not just pick on the military. And so, yeah, and frankly, I'd have to declare conflict if the state wants to look at compensating landowners, because that's something that I'd be all for and I'd personally benefit from. But if we're going to do that, I think we have to, like I said, you have to understand the entirety of the issue and recognize that obviously, lack of development due to environmental concerns, and especially trying to protect raptors, is by and far, from what I understand, the most significant detriment, I think, to developing wind farms. So yeah, let's do that. We can consider that, but let's consider the whole part of the issue, not just pick on the military.
So Co-Chairman Eklund, do you have some comments on this?
Yes, so my thoughts on what we should do have changed as the military's moved forward with different actions. And from the get-go, I guess I viewed this as more or less a takings. I started out trying to figure out what else it could be other than a taking of property from individuals. And I believe it's the state of Wyoming's obligation to try to protect our property owners. Constitutionally, we should be doing that. What we did with the previous bill was try to come up with a compromise that left the landowners out of the loop in that conversation. I do believe that getting the Industrial Siting Council involved in it, the county commissioners and the local people involved in it, is important. But ultimately, we have given away a property right that doesn't belong to the state of Wyoming. And it's a 2-mile setback. And so I guess I'm going to propose something different as well than what we brought into this bill. We tried to reduce it down to an area that they maybe need. We're unsure of that, rather than the 2-mile setback. If you have the 2-mile setback, and there's also a ceiling, I think a 500-foot ceiling throughout part of this area. I'm not sure how high the wind turbines are, but I think they're less than than 500. Go ahead,
Senator Boner.
Yeah, there are 499 feet, Mr. Chairman. That's an FAA regulation that has nothing to do with the military. That's I don't know. That's just a general. Obviously, that affects all types of aviation, not just military aviation. So that's a whole different ball of wax. And we're talking about federal regulations that promote safety of of people flying all sorts of aircraft. So this is a much broader application than just the military concerns. So I mean, the wind turbines in Commerce County are 499 feet, and there's no military within 100 miles.
Or Chairman Eklund, do you have anything else, or should we go to somebody else?
Well, I'll probably add more before we're done, but I have a conceptual amendment to what I started out with in view of the changes that we've seen over the last little bit.
All right, Senator Boner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to add, as far as the path forward, I do think we need to engage with our congressional delegation. There's also the Defense Access Road Program, which provides payments to state and local government to basically maintain the roads in the missile complex to a standard which the Air Force needs to move some very sensitive material across those roads. And I'm just thinking of the way things work, say in the oil field as a rancher, that the ranchers get compensated for the truck traffic on those roads. Granted, they're private roads, so it's a little bit different, but the dust from any sort of activity on those roads does cause an impact to your livestock. And so maybe as we look forward to the ground-based strategic deterrent coming online, there's an opportunity to make some changes there, and maybe a per mile or per portion thereof payment to the landowner for the increased activity that impacts our property on these roads might be a good path forward to, if we're going to use if we're going to have a multi-billion-dollar project in eastern Laramie County, maybe that's one way we can help out the landowners as far as finding a path forward, and just acknowledging that quite a bit has changed since 1963 when a lot of these programs got started, and so just trying to find a compromise that does work for the landowners. And just to say, I think that if we change the legislation at all or the statute at all, it takes us backwards. It makes us even less relevant than we are now. We have to have a good compromise that the Air Force has agreed to if we're going to be compelling and convincing the federal government to kind of come back to this process that provides for local input and a negotiation within that 2 nautical miles instead of a hard and fast no development requirement.
Well, Senator Anderson has a question. Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I heard in this conversation that the Air Force is sticking to their 2-mile radius discussion. And we're thinking we might have to have the congressional delegation to change something for that. And we are saying the state of Wyoming would go to a 1-mile radius and be in direct conflict with what the Air Force has right now. Is this really wise for us to get crosswise with the Air Force on their 2-mile radius?
Senator Boner or Co-Chairman Eklund, whichever.
Whoops. Yes, I'm still on.
So Co-Chairman Eklund or Senator Boner? Senator Boner.
Okay, I'll go. To answer the question, I think that it would be a mistake because we were relying on basically the Air Force and really the political appointee in the Pentagon as a decision maker. Like I said, Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition or something like that. I try to avoid that place like the plague when I was on active duty. But we have to be able to convince them that we have a good compromise here at the state level. It's up to them to decide that they're going to basically cede that decision making to a more local, more balanced approach. So I think that this continued focus on the radius, the 2-mile nautical mile radius, it blaze a fundamental misunderstanding of what we did in the compromise and the things the Air Force gave up. The continued focus on it is becoming a little frustrating, frankly, because it's just going to make us completely irrelevant. So if we want the compromise where there will be development within that 2 nautical mile radius, and there will be an opportunity for the local landowner, the rancher, as well as the developer to have their say in the process, we have to stick to what we did in Senate File 36. So
Senator
yeah,
Endicott, it's good to see you. Would you like to speak?
Great to see you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, as this committee recalls from the last session with Senator Boner and myself presenting this issue, and Senator Boner really carrying the water as a result of his extensive experience being an airman. I was contacted. I knew that Co-Chairman Eklund was passionate about this issue as a result of some of his constituents in his district. And thought that this issue might reoccur this year, despite the extensive work that we did in the previous interim and in the last session with the Corporations Committee that deals with wind turbines and siting and some of those issues where Senate File 36 was passed. Contacted last week by the military, really expressing their grave concern over kind of this surprise move at this bill at this time. Primary focus associated with that, and I just want to stress this to the committee members, with this refocus of this nautical mile that Senator Boner identifies, which I think is a complete distraction, and I agree with Senator Boner. But the purpose for that really goes to airmen safety, right? Who are flying in helicopters near and around those wind turbines, as well as our nuclear security and safety of those missile sites, right, which are vulnerable. And so the basis for the 2 miles is that rationale, right? The rationale is not associated with trying to take away federal dollars from local landowners, whom I really question how many are in this 1 mile radius that we're talking about that may lose some federal dollars as a result of lack of payment from that exclusion from that 2 mile radius, with the primary purpose being that safety concern of our national interests and that of our airmen. So I'm very troubled by this dichotomy that we've been faced with of supplanting this airman safety over a few landowners, 1 mile radius of federal dollars coming into their pockets. To the state's interests, to just kind of hit it all up and save your time. I know you're running ahead of schedule. I was planned for 11, so I apologize for this early start. But F.E. Warren Air Force Base, Cheyenne, Laramie County, Wyoming was selected #1 on ground-based strategic deterrence as the first site selected from our 3 nuclear bases in the country. This is significant. This is something this community has fought hard for to ensure our base was viable, so we could get $90 billion, some of that congressional reauthorization money to update our nuclear facilities. That money is going to be flowing into the state of Wyoming as a result of that. This type of local action jeopardizes that as a result of us kind of messing around with our nuclear facilities. And I think that that's reckless and dangerous. And I would ask this committee to resist the temptation to review this bill. This issue was already gone through the interim process and vetted through all the stakeholders through great compromise from the wind industry, from the military, from the legislature, and all of those stakeholders. And so the review of this bill at this time is inappropriate, and I'd urge your resistance to it.
Thank you. Co-Chairman Eklund.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So our people out in my district, and it's basically my district that's affected by these missile silos, are not anti-military, and they want the safety of the airmen to be in the forefront. The concern I have is if we can't correct what amounts to a taking, there were active conversations going on out in my country to put in wind farms, and that ended with the legislation from last year. They stopped conversation and they left the area, and it just kind of happened immediately. The what I'm bringing up is that we go back into the normal process of negotiation. It was a 1,200-foot setback. I don't think the mile makes any difference. Anything we do is probably going to be ignored. I think we go back to the original agreement, and then the federal government needs to compensate landowners as they push these easements forward. If it's a 2-mile setback, it eliminates wind farms throughout the whole region. And it isn't a few landowners. It's hundreds of thousands of acres. Eastern Laramie County is only part of it. You've got Nebraska, and you've got Colorado, and you've got other people involved. But I think it's our job as legislators to probably, to look out for the interests of private property rights. It seems to be quite a constitutional conversation we have all the time. And I don't believe, I'm going to say a little bit about this. I don't believe it'll end anything that F.E. Warren has in place for rebuilding these missile silos and upgrading, and the dollars that are flowing in. That decision's already been made. The compensation back to landowners would be an insignificant portion of the money that's there. I just think that at some point in time, we better make a stand and better find an interest in protecting private property rights. This to me still remains a taking, and I'll let the conversation continue.
So Senator Boner, you have something?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to, I guess, echo what Chairman Eklund said. I think the path forward is to advocate for the ranchers, for the landowners, and maybe through, I suggested an adjustment to the Defense Access Road Program, since that's going to be something that's changing with the implementation of the ground-based strategic deterrent coming online. But we could always look at an amendment to the current restrictive easement, which was a part of the original deal of these missile silos, the land on which these missile silos are located, being purchased from the landowner back in the early 60s. So they actually purchased the acre or two that these launch facilities or delivery facilities are on. But in addition to that, they purchased a 1,200-foot restrictive easement where you can't build anything. You can't build so much as a shed, or at least you're not supposed to. I will say that one of the last things I did at the headquarters unit, 20th Air Force, was send out letters to folks who violated that 1,200-foot restrictive easement. The record for stupidest thing I saw was an oil and gas pad up in North Dakota that was within 600 feet of a launch facility. So these, the enforcement of the 1,200-foot restrictive easement, frankly, is lacking. Just so we understand the full picture here. But I think it is a good opportunity to revisit maybe some compensation for the landowners, either that or a Defense Access Road Program. Either way, I think we have to maintain what we did in statute to have a good balanced approach that also addresses another way of addressing the property right concerns is giving the landowners a voice in the process, which they don't currently have. So
Senator Boner, you did say that they bought the 1,200 feet.
In 1963, yes, sir.
Okay.
And obviously that was a hard and fast. You can't develop anything at all. You can't put it so much as a shed.
But that's what they're doing today.
No, it's not. No, they're going through the FAA process, which consistently, federal process consistently limits development of wind turbines. And as a result, I mean, I suppose you could say the same thing for, if you want to talk about a takings argument, the courts are always available to the landowner.
I'm not debating this. I just want to know whether they are taking 2 miles and you cannot develop at all. Is that what they're saying? No, you can develop for this bill.
What they did through the FAA, Mr. Chairman, is saying you can't develop a wind turbine.
499 feet and lower.
Right. Yeah, that's another requirement of the Federal Aviation Administration. It's separate from the issue we're talking about today, but obviously affects development overall. All I'm pointing out is that the differences between the 1,200-foot restrictive easement and what the Air Force is doing through the FAA is different because it's only limited to wind turbine development. It's not a hard pass. You can't develop anything within 2 nautical miles. Obviously, that would be a little over the top. So I guess I cringe at the comparison to 1,200-foot restrictive easement, having dealt with it quite a bit when I was on active duty. It's just not a very good comparison, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nethercott, do you have something?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for indulging me. Just a quick follow-up on that piece of the difference between the 1,200 to the 2 mile. I think Senator Boner highlighted that distinction between the prohibition of developing, huge wind turbines around a nuclear missile site and launch facility. So, and the ability to protect that and to protect that airspace around that location. That's the purpose. It comes to our national security, and it comes to the security of those airmen who are flying overhead in those helicopters over those launch facilities to ensure the security and safety of those nuclear missiles in the ground. So you can see, as you can imagine, the attempt to try to fly a helicopter through a wind turbine farm is quite challenging, particularly in January, in a blizzard, white turbines in a white snowstorm, when you have a security alert on a launch facility, getting the attention of the Pentagon in the middle of the night. When something like that happens, it may just be an antelope or it may not be. But we need those airmen out there to make those determinations and to secure their safety. In addition, the location of those launch facilities, even though those large landowners know those locations, our foreign adversaries, we do not want them to know with specificity. And when you see wind turbines go up in a very strategic location, approximately 1,200 feet away, it's very clear to see the location of those launch facilities. So as you can imagine, the vulnerabilities that are presented by the construction and erection of these wind turbines to the location of launch facilities. So again, just going back to the purpose of the 2 mile radius comes from the wisdom of our United States Air Force and their determinations that this really has to do with the safety of our airmen and the safety of all of us when it comes to securing those nuclear assets.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Landon, you've been sitting there quietly. Do you have something to add to this since you were the chair?
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Really appreciate the debate. Have learned a great deal sitting here today, but as you are well aware, the Corporations Committee has taken up issues with regard to renewable energy sources over the last couple of years. And we have literally taken hundreds of hours of testimony. I think it's been touched on, but I do know with the new administration coming in, I think we'll have lots more conversations like this one today with regard to policy and how it affects landowners, the state of Wyoming. We have a couple pieces of legislation that we will take up this next session, forwarded by the Corporations Committee, which were themselves, I think, somewhat controversial. I was really glad to have Senator Nethercott alongside. I think the Corporations Committee has done some really good work with respect to the Industrial Siting Council and how we have to try to approach really the intrusion of some of these renewables onto these land sites. And so I think it's an energy source, a couple of energy sources that we certainly want, Chairman Von Flater, but we have to ease our way through and do it right. And so this is just another case of some of the tension points that we're going to have as we move forward. But really appreciate Senator Boner, who leaned into the blocking sled last year as we worked Senate File 36. And of course, Co-Chairman Eklund provides that perspective from the private landowners in the eastern part of our state. So thanks for the opportunity to sit in today.
Thank you. Co-Chairman Eklund, do you have something? And
Yes, so as far as the setbacks, the 2-mile setbacks, these missile silos are approximately on 6-mile grids. You do a 2-mile setback and it eliminates the wind farms in this area. And everything that the Air Force has done, it's central. We can see what they're doing. With a 2-mile setback, there can't be a wind farm there. You can't put in transmission lines unless you want to zigzag around these circles that are out in the middle of 6-mile grids and try to put in turbines there. The safety of the airmen will be fine because the action that's been taken eliminates wind farms in this region. My hope here to correct the problem that the state of Wyoming got into last year is to protect the private property rights of people in Wyoming. Constitutionally, that's our job. I can't do much about what the federal government does or doesn't do, but I can do something about what the state of Wyoming does. We don't have any kind of a right to give away property that isn't ours, but we can support those people that have had the property removed. And so what I'm hoping to do is put forth a conceptual amendment, remove the 1-mile setback. We go back to the original agreement that the Air Force had with the landowner, which is they bought the pad. They've got a 1,200-foot setback, and we renegotiate the easement and compensate the landowners. So if we get into some of that constitutional obligation that I think the state has, we would be in Title I, Section 26, and mostly Article 7. There's several existing protections that we have for people and their property. And I would like to use that as the amendment that I'm proposing. We're not going to stop. We just simply are not going to stop or start up wind farms. They've been removed. This 2-mile setback and this what the Air Force has done has removed that. The landowners are not arguing that the airmen need to be saved, and they're not anti-military. I guarantee you that doesn't happen out in our country. But they've had a significant amount of income removed from them. I believe that there needs to be an obligation by the federal government to do, as an example, are we going to have contractors that come in and do the work that's going to happen for free? I'm guessing not. It'll be bid out, they'll be paid. I'm just asking that everybody making this happen, which is to have airfields that are safe for our servicemen. Everyone affected in it is compensated for their part in it. And so that will be my conceptual amendment to the committee. I think I need to probably let some other people talk, and unless we're done, and
Representative Newsom has something to say. Representative Newsom.
Mr. Chairman, I wondered if there are current wind facilities that are within that 2-mile radius of any of the missile silos, and what will be the dispensation for them? Will they be forced to remove those wind farms? Also, are our surrounding states, my family has some land in northeastern Colorado that has missile silos very close. And are those states taking up any action as we have, or are they not talking about it?
So Chairman Eklund, do you know of anybody that has any facilities?
Yes, there are wind farms in Kimball and Banner County, I think. I think mostly Kimball County, though, that butt up right against the 1,200-foot setback that's in existence, and those farms are there and in place and functioning. As far as the other states, I think each state's going to have to take up this matter on their own. I would guess Montana and South Dakota may also have to bring it in as well. So the conversation in.
Senator Boner has something to say about this.
Oh, for sure, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, there is development, and the most significant being, I guess I don't know, it's in Weld County. It's Oscar Flight, as I know it. Lots of wind turbine development, and so I think the plan moving forward is at some point these projects have to be renewed after 25 to 30 years. And so, if this hard and fast restriction from the Federal Aviation Administration remains in place, then any of those turbines within that 2 nautical miles will have to basically effectively go away, to be reclaimed. I just want to point out that there is a project moving forward in the Panhandle, Nebraska, through Orion Energy. I believe that's the folks who talked to Chairman Eklund's constituents. They are moving forward with a wind project. It's just looks significantly different than it otherwise would, as you may imagine, with that 2 nautical mile restriction. And from what I understand, the restriction only deals with the turbines themselves, not the support equipment, not the collection lines, transmission lines, and so on. So to answer that question, yes, moving forward, if we continue to kind of cede to the federal government this authority instead of trying to bring them back to the compromise that we made here at the state level, then yeah, we're going to see some wind turbines in northeastern Colorado, Panhandle, Nebraska, and throughout Montana and North Dakota probably go away as they look to renew those projects. And so as far as other states go, I know Montana legislature had an interim committee topic regarding this issue, and that the Air Force has been engaging with the North Dakota's equivalent of the Industrial Siting Council. But I'm not as up to speed as to where those efforts are at. I think it's kind of a moot point now, since FAA took kind of that heavy-handed approach. Like I said, I think the goal should be to try to get them back to the compromise that we have in our statutes.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of the questions are being answered as people speak, but I still want to get into maybe Representative Eklund can speak on the taking of property, and then maybe the haste of doing this bill now. Can we wait another year? Like Senator Boner said, go back to the table, do more discussion. What are some of the ramifications of us just jumping into this now? There seems like there's a lot going on here. I don't want to make a decision hastily. So if someone can answer the question, dealing with the takings, and then why the haste, maybe that'll help me out a little bit. Senator
Pappas, you have something?
Yeah, I just had a question for Senator Boner. Brian, does this, I'm assuming this does not affect the MAFs, only the LFs? Can you verify that?
It affects both the MAFs and the LFs. So, as somebody who spent a lot of time on a MAF, I kind of like them to be secure too. And obviously that's a location from which you control at least 10 missiles up to 50 missiles. So those alert facilities are quite important, as important, if not more important, than the launch facilities where the nuclear weapons are actually housed.
Senator Nethercott, do you have something?
Mr. Co-Chairman, thank you. I do believe that the military is here and prepared to testify and provide and answer most of these questions very directly, very meaningfully. And so with that, I know we were about 45 minutes earlier than the agenda indicated. So good for you, committee, for being on time and under budget. But with that, yes, all of the states that house these launch facilities are working on different types of legislation. As you can imagine, the majority of the launch facilities associated with F.E. Warren Air Force Base actually aren't located in the state of Wyoming, right? They're located where Representative Newsom's family has land, which is in northern Colorado and western Nebraska. So when we talk about GBSD and we also talk about the viability of FE Warren, like so much of our assets in this state are influenced by external factors, like the state of Colorado and their support of military efforts, which is significantly less than our own as a result of different political efforts and motivation. So they would favor wind development over nuclear asset preservation. I fear the future of this as a result of the new federal administration. So I think a question would be that the military may not present is, are the launch facilities that are located in the state of Colorado in further jeopardy of their viability, and are those assets being made significantly more vulnerable as a result of wind development? The answer would be yes. And the same in western Nebraska. In fact, those wind turbines, I think, went up with very little warning to the military, with no ability really for them to participate in a process associated with whether or not those wind turbines should be erected. And they had to deal with the negative impacts associated with the construction of those wind farms, thus their intimate familiarity with the danger that they present to their airmen. So you can see that reality. So I just want to take that back to whether or not an Air Force base goes under a BRAC. That has to do with whether or not that base should be shut down. Should a base be shut down because its launch facilities in these surrounding areas are no longer viable? Certainly. What else is its mission if its mission can't be effectuated because local landowners want to get paid for their wind turbines? Or under this administration, should some of that GBSD money be redirected to states that aren't struggling with these setbacks? Again, this is a much bigger issue with significant consequences that we've already settled, providing that level of stability. So I just want to answer some of those questions and then let the committee know that I do think the military is present and able to answer some of those questions.
So do we have anybody, Mary Beth, do we have anybody from the military here other than?
Mr. Chairman, we have Colonel Dean Conowitz, and he is in the meeting and available.
Okay. Colonel, would you like to speak?
Good morning, Chairman. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak this morning and address your committee. I'm Colonel Dean Conowitz. I'm the Vice Wing Commander here at the 90th Missile Wing. And between the 90th Missile Wing here at FE Warren Air Force Base, along with 20th Air Force Global Strike Command, and the Defense Department, we all maintain a firm and consistent position, as documented by the DoD Siting Clearinghouse, that wind turbines need to be set back from all missile field facilities by at least 2 nautical miles. The security of the intercontinental ballistic missile complex is a top national security priority, and the helicopter operations form an integral part of our day-to-day security of these complexes and security incident response. Wind turbines interfere with the security operations by restricting helicopter approach avenues, limiting turn radius, severely impacting air-to-ground security response integration, and creating hazards for infiltration and exfiltration of response forces. The risk that wind turbines present to our helicopter operations increase exponentially as weather and lighting conditions deteriorate. This 2 nautical mile encroachment limitation ensures the safety of our airmen and helicopters, as well as the security of our launch facilities, missile alert facilities, and the ICBM weapon system. The security of these vital national assets is critical to our long-term viability of our nuclear deterrent capability. Any security risk to our facility becomes a national security risk and may impact military readiness. Thank you again for the opportunity to address the committee. Those were just some of my prepared remarks to reiterate our position, but I am happy to address any questions that the audience may have. Thank you, Chairman.
Committee, do you have any questions of the Colonel? Seeing none. Thank you, Colonel. Appreciate it. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm back to that question. Are there facilities that have construction within that 2 mile that will have to be removed? In Wyoming, Colorado, or Nebraska, or wherever you're operating?
Colonel, do you have an answer for that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have currently 46 sites at the F.E. Warren Missile Complex that are severely encroached. And our position through the clearinghouse is that when those the term of those wind turbines expires in terms of their viability, that the clearinghouse restrictions will remain in place for the 2 nautical miles. And we hope that those encroachments are removed at that point. But until that point, they do remain an obstacle for our airmen. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Senator Anderson?
Yes.
Okay. I really want to let Dale Steenbergen in because he's been patiently waiting. So let him speak and we'll get to Senator Boner right after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dale Steenbergen. I'm President, CEO of the Greater Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce. I'm also a small ag operator in Laramie County. And for several years, I had property in Nebraska that was in the middle of the missile field and facilitated agricultural owners to build wind farms. As a matter of fact, we're still working on one just across the line in Kimball County. So I certainly understand that there are interests on all sides of this. The thing I would express that I think was impressed upon me most from the Air Force is that I've been the CEO here for 13 years. And in all of that time, I've only been asked by the Air Force to push forward a political initiative one time. And that was on these setbacks. And that request initially came from Global Strike Command, who we work with closely in Louisiana, but was also reinforced by local Air Force members. And it was reinforced as a safety issue for airmen. And so I think at that point, it didn't take much thinking on our part, is that it is important to protect our men and women in uniform, to give them the tools that they need. And, you know, we are the ones that started working on GBSD in 2012 was the first year we started lobbying federally for the new missile, to be the first ones off for that. And I can tell you that our friends in North Dakota and Montana would certainly like to be the ones to have GBSD first. And, you know, we're talking about billions of dollars. As a matter of fact, it's the largest economic development project ever in the history of Wyoming, if we can get it nailed down and things go right. But minds can be changed. And we want to make sure that when the federal government looks at Wyoming and our efforts and what's happening in Nebraska and Colorado, that they see this as a place that supports the military, that understands the challenges, and that they know that we are 100% in their court to make sure that we uphold this very, very important mission for our country. That being said, I do understand that from a ranching family, every dollar counts, and that when they take use of your property, it is always a concern, or they keep you from doing something that is a potential revenue generator for you. So I think there are some ways to help with that federally as we move forward. The other thing, and I'll quit talking, is that we need to remember that one of the reasons this was done is to be able to have some local input, right? The state of Wyoming can do whatever they want. And if that's a threat to the military, they're not going to mess with us. They're going to go to the federal clearinghouse. They're going to get the 2 miles and we'll have no input. One of the beauties of all of what we did last year was to be able to allow local landowners to talk to the commander of Warren Air Force Base and have a discussion with him about what could happen. And if that is not how we advance, then we'll just be putting ourselves at the wishes of the federal government. So I would encourage us to leave the 2 miles in place. We spent many, many, many hours negotiating to get to this point. until we have a really, really compelling reason to go away from that compromise, I would ask that we stay with the 2 miles and that we support our military friends and make sure that our airmen safe as they fly across the prairie in some very hazardous weather conditions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Steenbergen? Seeing none, Senator Boner? Do you have anything?
Mr. Chairman, just very briefly, a follow-up to Senator Anderson's question. I think it was Representative Newsom's as well. When we talk about removing, wind turbines, I just want to make it clear from a rancher's perspective that these agreements with these wind companies only last for the 25 to 30 years that the current equipment is good for. And after that, there's no guarantees that the project is going to continue. So I want to make sure that when we talk about what Colonel Conowitz was discussing of when it comes time to repower these projects, that they're going to object to the serious encroachment that they're currently dealing with, that it's not the same as just uprooting the turbines and getting rid of them. It's a whole new legal document. It's a whole new business deal that has no guarantee of coming to fruition. So I just want to make that distinction because I think it is important.
Thank you. Mary Beth, do you have somebody else in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any other people for public comment.
Okay. Anybody in the committee want to ask any of these? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your indulgence, this would be more of a conversational item, and this might be the appropriate time so that somebody else would have an opportunity to rebut. But if you go back to the common law, which is what our legal system is based on, back in the days, they talked about the bundle of sticks and your rights. And at that point, when you owned a piece of property, you owned down to the center of the earth and you owned up to the heavens, however high that might be. And you could basically do anything that you wanted with your own piece of property. As the world continued to evolve, then you got neighbors, and suddenly your property rights you could do things that would affect your neighbor. And a good example that they use today is a feedlot. I've got some property on the edge of town. That doesn't mean that I could turn it into a feedlot because there's a huge odor and there's a lot of noise. So I can't do just absolutely anything that I want with a piece of property. And when we start talking about takings, I think that you have to keep in mind that it's always a balancing act. And no matter where you are, what you do on your property affects your neighbor and affects people that may be downwind. Maybe it's affecting the military. So I think that this conversation, we're talking about changing the setback, but really it's much more complicated than that. We're talking about property rights, not only of the individual that owns that piece of property, but also of the military and the federal government. In about 1928 or 29, it was called the CAA at that time. They decided at that point that anything over 14,000 feet was owned by the federal government. And then in about the 40s, they dropped that down to 1,200 feet. And around a town, it's down to 750 feet. And above that, the Federal Aviation Administration controls what happens with the airspace. And I can't go shoot rockets or anything else that I want to do because that airspace is now owned by or controlled by the Federal Aviation Administration. So as the world has become more populated and more complex, the traditional property rights have now it becomes more of a balancing act. And so I'm reluctant to vote in favor of this bill, not out of lack of respect for anybody or property rights or anything, but this is a very complicated issue. And it's something that you have to take and get everybody at the table. And even then, sometimes legislation is not going to take care of it because it has to do with an individual and their neighbor, and it's really more properly solved by the courts as opposed to blanket legislation
which can change, and 2 miles here may not be enough, or maybe it's way too much. So I would encourage us to stay with what we had, and if this needs to be an interim topic and study it more thoroughly, that should be done. But to just say, well, 2 is too much and 1 is plenty, that just doesn't do it. So those are my comments, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Representative McGuire. Any other comments from the co-chairman Eklund? Do you have any comments?
Yes. So I'm thinking maybe people aren't hearing me very well. The 2-mile setback is in place. It's been taken by the Air Force, and we've been overruled with our industrial siting compromise, I guess is what you wanted to call it. So I'm not arguing that the 2-mile setback is a necessary deal for the safety of the airmen, for the national security, all of those things. That part probably, that part will stay. They more or less stepped over the top of the state of Wyoming, and it's in place. I guess the amendment I'd like to bring to it, and I'd like to address Senator Hutchings. Do we have to do this now? I think we better deal with it, and rather than tabling it, looking at it at a later date. Well, this is fresh. Start dealing with what's happened with the property right that's been taken, and it's a large portion of the bundle of sticks. Agriculturally, you can't begin to make as much money as you would with a wind farm. So what I'd like to bring is an amendment that looks into the compensation of these people who have been damaged by this action. And the reason that I think the state of Wyoming needs to be involved is we have a constitutional obligation to protect our property owners and their rights. And this would just be a support mechanism for those people. Whether or not it's going to make any difference or not, I don't know. I'm not sure. As Representative McGuire said, it's probably going to be settled in the courts if it's settled anywhere. But if the state of Wyoming doesn't make some kind of a stand on this to support the local property owners in something as basic as this, I'm just not sure what we do with the rest of the Constitution. So that's where I kind of stand on it. And if we can get into the bill, I guess I'd like to make some changes to the bill.
Mary Beth, if we don't have anybody else on public comment will be closed. I don't think we have anybody.
Mr. Chairman, you are correct.
Okay, so public comment is closed. Back to the committee. What does the committee want to do with this bill?
Chairman?
Yes. Senator Hutchings?
Thank you, sir. I would just like to comment or get further explanation from Representative Eklund. What I'm gathering is the people who have this land, if they can't get that additional 1 mile, is he saying that there's nothing they can do on that land that will give them or benefit them as much as putting up wind turbines? And would they be willing to risk national security and the lives and well-being of airmen just to put up wind turbines when maybe they can grow a specific crop or have a specific animal on that property? Is that what I'm hearing?
Representative Eklund?
No, not really. They still have the land to use for agricultural purposes. The inability to put a wind farm on their property reduces the value of that property. The wind farm, I forget what it is, but it's probably a 10-fold increase in what they can get. Their best bet would would be to hit oil, but that's not happening in all places, and you just don't know if that will happen. Yes, they can do other things with the land. It doesn't reduce it just takes a bunch of the sticks out of the bundle without any compensation. And that's what I'm saying.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to table this bill 21 LSO 249.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Brown.
Oh, second on Representative Brown. So no further discussion. All in favor of tabling this bill, please raise your hand in front of the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Senator Von Flitter, my hand is up.
10, 11. So that bill has been tabled.
Mr. Chairman, if I can for just a second, I'd like to take a brief second here and explain where I'm coming from, because I share the concerns that Chairman Eklund has with this, and actually he and I worked pretty heavy with this particular bill last year. The one thing I'll say is, since I've been in the legislature here, going on 5 years now, we say respect the process. And what I've learned is last year, I did not get the way that I wanted, nor the way that my constituents wanted with this particular bill, nor did Chairman Eklund. And what I would say is I feel like this is still a major fault with the federal government. I feel like this is an issue that the federal government needs to be addressing. And I think I'm going to take Senator Boner up on his stance to work with the federal delegation, and I'll assist with that as well, as much as we can, to try to get some assistance for these people that are losing valuable land here. I do think that this is a federal issue, and I do think that the state doing this is a little heavy-handed in my opinion. But what I don't want to see happen is something that we discussed a little bit earlier with Major General Greg Porter here. We have the opportunity to be receiving a new mission with, or an updated mission, if you will, with the Wyoming Air National Guard, and that has a federal component. Jeopardizing something like that here in the city of Cheyenne, where we may lose our airlift wing because we have 50, 60 landowners that may be affected by this, does not account to the 1,200 plus families that would be affected if we lost a mission with Wyoming Air National Guard. So I really think that we need to be careful on what we're doing here. I think we need to be very, very judicious on how we're going about this. And I think us working through this process, not necessarily jumping back to the way things were, but working with our federal delegation and then coming back to this with a more thought out and a more thorough process is the way to go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Brown and Senator Boner. I hope you do get somewhere with the federal delegation, and we don't have to live with this 2-mile wind turbine zone that wind turbines are not allowed into. And I hope you do it in a way that the FAA and everybody else gets on board. So good for you, and wish you good luck. So is there anything else for the committee before we take lunch? Anybody have anything else? Nothing, I see. Thank you, General Porter. I believe you've been here. Thank you.
Hey, sir. I did just want to take a moment to thank the committee, and especially our chairmen that are going off, yourself and Representative Eklund. Thank you for all your work that you've done for us over the years, and the time, effort, and energy put into it. The only thing constant about our world is it keeps changing. And for all those committee members that are leaving, I want to express the gratitude of the military department for your hard work, your willingness to understand the issues and keep continuing to work for us. And appreciate it very much. All the work you do for our state. It's exceptional, and appreciate it. Also want to welcome the new chairman. I see Senator Landon on. I see Representative Burkhart on as well. I see Representative O'Hearn, who I had a chance to serve with many years here in the Wyoming Guard. We get to work together again. So thanks to all you folks coming in. Looking very much forward to working with all of you. And please, all of you, just understand how much we appreciate your work. Have a great holiday season. And if anybody has any questions about anything we've discussed here today, be more than happy to talk with you about it. Chairman, thank you very much again, and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, General Porter. Any questions for General Porter? You want to make a comment on that? Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we'll be back at 1 o'clock for lunch. All right. Have lunch and 1 o'clock.